My entitled roommate allows her obnoxious friend into our house, who then decides to be the rudest person on planet Earth. But after she started attacking all of us consistently and constantly, I finally snapped and put my foot down, demanding that she get out of our apartment and never come back, resulting in one of the biggest blowups in my friend group that I've ever seen in my life. Here's what happened. During one of my college programs at a very popular theme park in Florida, you know, a magical rat planet of sorts, I live with some roommates. The program offered housing, and at the time, they had 4 apartment complexes. One was for foreign college students, and the other 3 were for North American college programmers, or CPs. Each apartment came with a different price tag that they automatically snatched from our ridiculous work checks weekly. Now, the newest and nicest apartments came with 2 refrigerators, but it was expensive. The second most expensive was quiet and close to the foreign college student complex, and then there was the oldest one, the cheapest one known as the party place. It was considered the hood or the ghetto of CP housing. Keep in mind, it had 2 pools, one with a hot tub, a gym, a tennis court, and was where the CP bus station for the car list was located. It was also in walking distance to multiple stores and restaurants. Now, no matter what apartment we chose, we had to share rooms with one other person, so I opted to save money, meaning that I chose the cheapest apartment. I had extended my program with a prior roommate and friend, so we decided to share rooms. For the sake of the story, I'll call her Kendra. Kendra and I also then met 3 women who we will call Jamie, Kelly, and Haley. We had room for one more roommate as it was a 3-bedroom, and after a month, we received our new roommate who I will call Shonda. Shonda was older but still in her 20s. She also had 2 younger children back in her state, namely a son and a daughter. We asked her if she was cool to leave her children for a year, so she explained that she had them young and never got to explore herself or be free. So we decided to mind our own business because it definitely was not our business. Now, it's important to note that Shonda meant what she said and was definitely some version of the word free. A week didn't pass where she wasn't drunk, clubbing, partying, or staying over some random dude's house. But again, we just minded our own business. Shonda then made friends with a girl from her job who I will call Amanda. Now, Amanda partied hard as well. And one day, Shonda and Amanda got into a drunken brawl in an alleyway behind a club. Shonda then complained to us about Amanda and her attitude. And while we did listen, we also remained silent because we were minding our own business. Now, Haley is Muslim, and due to this, we had a rule that guests were to be announced before coming in so that she could dress appropriately if need be. It didn't matter if it was a male or female. All guests were to be announced. And you know what? We all follow this except for Shonda, who just randomly showed up with Amanda one day. Now, Amanda is female, so Haley was okay with it, but we were all still irritated. Anyways, it was Friday and they were getting ready to go out. Amanda then walked in and we were confused because the last we heard, her and Shonda had had a falling out again, to which we just minded our own business. Amanda then started judging our apartment's layout, asking why we had it set up like that. We then explained that we enjoyed changing it up since all the apartments had literally the same decor. Shonda was in her room showering and getting dressed, while Amanda continued being rude to us in the living room. Amanda then asked how to get down to the downtown area of the magical rat planet. My roommate Jamie then said, well, if you take the F bus, it will take you right there. Amanda then responded by saying, I already know that. I meant by car. I don't ride the bus. Now, it's important to know that Jamie is the kind of person that will throw hands, and it showed in her face. Jamie remained quiet though, and kept typing on her laptop. Haley then asked Amanda what they had planned, and she, with an attitude, said they were going downtown and then clubbing. Some other things were also said that made Haley laugh. Now, Haley was annoying. She was very loud, boisterous. She scream-talked and laughed very loudly. Most people found her to be a lot, and although we hung out occasionally, I usually kept my distance as I had and have severe anxiety, and she had that kind of personality that really spiked it. Well, Haley started laughing loudly, and I mean full-on cackling, and Amanda just looked on in disgust. She then shouted and said, "Oh my God, can you shut up?" Now, once that happened, Haley stopped laughing, and my roommates and I all looked at her, and you know what? At that moment, I had had enough. I calmly but firmly spoke up and said the following: "You need to leave." Amanda looked at me and said, "What?" I then repeated myself and I said, "You need to leave our apartment now." Amanda, thinking I was joking, laughed at me and said, "But why?" I looked at her and I said, "You've literally been rude to everyone since you walked in. You need to leave now." Amanda then tried to double back and say, "But she was annoying and loud." But I responded and said, "This is her home. She pays rent here and you don't. She has a right to be loud in her own home. Get out." I opened the front door and Amanda walked outside. Shonda then comes running from the back asking what happened. And we explain everything and I tell her Amanda isn't allowed in the apartment anymore. The other roommates also agree with this and Shonda is furious. The next day, Shonda asked for a roommate meeting where she says how we treated her friend was wrong. I asked her, didn't she herself have a fight with Amanda due to her attitude a few weeks prior? But then Shonda said, "Oh, well, we made up. Well, my roommates and I told her Amanda still wasn't allowed over as she was rude. About a week later, Amanda came over but stayed on the porch. She knocked on the door, and when I answered the door, she apologized. I thanked her for the apology, and she asked if it was okay if she could come in now. But when I turned and asked my roommates, they still said no, she can't come in. Well, Shonda was angry and put in an apartment transfer a week later. She left stating that she couldn't live where her friends weren't welcomed, and honestly, we just simply didn't care, because Shonda was just as obnoxious as her friend Amanda. Okay, first of all, Shonda is literally one of the worst people on planet Earth. You mean to tell me that she left her kids to go work at Disney for a year? And yeah, they're talking about Disney. I think it's pretty obvious in this story. But like, seriously, what kind of awful mother are you? If you're gonna have kids, then congratulations, you need to take care of them. You can't just abandon them and be like, I need to explore and find myself. It's like, no, you need to find a job and take care of the kids. Like, what are you doing? This is no time for partying. You need to buckle down and figure your life out. So honestly, good for you for putting Shonda in her place as well as Amanda, because both of them were obnoxious, and I don't blame you for kicking Amanda out in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled coworker pesters me repeatedly, stating that he needs a new phone only after he found out that we're getting new phones in the office. So I decided to maliciously comply by turning this entire scenario right back at him, and doing it in such a way where he can't say anything about it. Here's what happened. So there's always this one person that is so very important that he always needs to tell everybody how important he is and how urgent his or her request truly is. Usually this goes hand in hand with utter incompetence and a generally nasty attitude. And this story is about one such person. So we were about to buy new work phones, and it definitely was time for an upgrade. The iPhones that the higher-ups thought were suitable for work were even 5 years ago better toys. The batteries drained quickly and never gave our users a really good experience. Well, we decided to wait until the newer version would come out, but news got around very quickly. Ever since the first rumor about a new shiny toy got around, there was this one salesperson who came into my office twice a week just to complain about his phone and how he desperately needed a new phone and how important it was for him to get a new phone as soon as possible. And no, for the record, he did not need it more than our guys out in the field, but boy, did he really cry about the thing. In the last 3 weeks, he went to our boss 3 times to complain that we apparently did not want to give him a new phone. Well, my boss rolled his eyes and suggested that we do something. Well, we had this one iPhone 13, which was still new in the box, and we had that for emergencies. So last Thursday, as he came in again to whine about his awful phone, I was very glad to help him out, as his phone was so bad, and he just needed a new phone so badly, and ironically enough, we could provide him a new phone immediately. Well, he was quite obviously not happy that he was getting the old iPhone 13, but as he had complained so loudly, and the CEO himself had greenlit this new phone for him, there was nothing that he could do other than to clench his fist and pretend to be happy that his severe situation was taken care of. After that, we informed the CEO that the situation was settled, and he just smiled and ordered new iPhones for everybody in the office the exact same day. Yeah, this is one of those scenarios where it's like, look, you're gonna get a phone eventually, but if you keep complaining, you're gonna get something that you probably don't want. And this story is proof that yes, that absolutely can happen. It is so unbelievably frustrating to deal with people who complain like this, where they act like they're in such a dire circumstance and they need help immediately. But in reality, they're just trying to work the system and get something that they definitely don't need. So good for you and the CEO for seeing through this garbage and solving this guy's problem in a way that I'm sure he wasn't expecting. My grandmother is a narcissistic weirdo who has consistently ruined every wedding that she's been to, and I'm honestly so sick of her that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to illustrate how my grandma really is, I'm gonna share some stories from my dad's life. The first one is when my mom and dad got married, and then the second one's with my dad's second marriage. So anyways, my dad was around 27 and my mom was 25, and they've been together for 3 years previously, and they wanted to tie the knot. Now, my grandmother wasn't a big fan of my mom from the very beginning, mostly because my mom didn't let her walk all over her to an extent, but also because my mom had an ex-fiance. It first began when she ruined the proposal. My dad proposed at a nice dinner party with family involved so everybody could be there. My mom knew about the proposal because she picked out the ring, but she just didn't know when it would happen. Well, my entitled grandma thought it would be a good idea and spoiled the proposal by declaring my uncle's deployment date right afterwards. Well, her plan didn't work and she got chewed out by my dad afterwards. However, throughout the entire dinner, she was making sly comments about the ring being too fancy and my mom being shallow about wanting such a nice ring. Now, I've seen the ring. It's one diamond with a twist band on it. It's far from being big and very far from being fancy. And after my mom didn't react to the ring, she began to go after my mom's weight. The dinner was a nightmare, and when she she and my dad went home, they didn't talk much. And then the planning went straight to Hades. My mom and dad wanted to be married within a year of the proposal, mostly due to financial reasons, because my mom wanted to start having children. But my grandma disagreed with this. They were moving too fast. And when my mom mentioned her plan for children, all of a sudden she was too old to begin having children, and that if she wanted children, she should have stayed with her fiance instead of marrying her son. Keep in mind, my mom was 25. If they got married, she would be 26. And then my entitled grandma began to tell her to stop with her career because it would be easier to just be a stay-at-home wife, especially if she wanted kids. Now, my mom did not stop her pursuit in her career. Well, my mom ended up just ignoring her for the most part, ignoring phone calls, text messages, and any kind of message, which caused my entitled grandma to have a conniption fit and go crying to my dad, who basically only responded by saying, okay. Her behavior continued throughout wedding planning, and everything had to be her way or the highway. The church was never right. The arch, the date, the wedding list. She tried to convince my parents to push back their wedding just to fit her and her friend's schedule. And when my mom denied her friends coming, she threatened not to come either. Well, my parents budged only slightly, mostly with the church because my mom wasn't attached to any church for the most part. My grandma tried to convince them to get married in her church, but my dad nor my mom lived anywhere close to her. My parents lived in Michigan, while my grandma lived in Wisconsin. The church was also incredibly small, as it was for a town of under 2,000 people. And while my mom and dad had a small wedding of only family and a handful of friends, it would not have fit my mom's family. My grandma complained and moaned about not having the wedding at her church. That is until my grandfather shut her up, saying that he would go without her. Wedding dress shopping came around, and my mom wanted simple pale colors for bridesmaids, with the wedding party and any guest wearing a couple of neutral colors. The wedding party was pale greens and pinks to accent her dress, and she had a beautiful dress. It was laced up with a puffy skirt and a beautiful veil, all with a corset with flowy sleeves. But of course, my grandma did not like the dress. My mom didn't invite her to wedding dress shopping, and neither did she invite her own mother, but that's because she lived in Florida, and just had her bridesmaids there along with her. Well, my grandma was infuriated about this. How dare she not invite her mother-in-law? And wouldn't you know it, my aunt also never invited her to go wedding dress shopping either. She said that she always dreamed of picking out a dress for her daughters or her daughter-in-law. My mom broke her heart. And then when she saw the dress, her lips pursed and her eyes widened. She began to tear into the dress, saying that it made my mom look like a lady of the night, and how dare she wear white and lie to God. She said the dress looked like it came out of a dumpster, and the dress didn't flatter her, and she looked like a sausage. My mom was so close to returning the dress because she no longer felt beautiful in the dress that she picked out. That is until my other grandmother chimed in and dug into my entitled grandmother and made her go cry to my dad like a beaten puppy. My entitled grandma cooled down for a while, and she didn't go after my mom while the planning was still going on, but instead she went after my dad. Now, my dad for the most part has always been the quiet stoic type. His way of dealing with his mom is agreeing with her but not doing what she says. For example, she wanted to have this selection of wine and beer, and my dad just said okay, but didn't even go with her choices. She would constantly be barking orders, but he would always just agree with her and then never do it. Now, this method was rather effective at times. However, her nagging started to get worse as she felt like she was getting her way. She became more bold and started calling caterers and flower arrangers just to try and change the plans around. But my mom and dad told them ahead of time, don't change anything unless you hear it from us. After a few calls of fighting, arguing, and shouting, she finally stopped, mostly because my dad threatened to uninvite her if she kept going. Her nagging went from the wedding workers all the way to him. She nagged him so much that he had to go to the emergency room for severe migraines and headaches twice. Finally, the wedding came around, and it was going to happen the way my parents want. She could make petty comments or remarks about things, but she wasn't going to ruin this day for mom. Well, as you all know, she's a pain in the neck, and you could probably have seen this a mile away, but she wore a wedding dress to the wedding. In fact, my entitled grandma wore the same wedding dress she wanted my mom to wear, and she even came in with a little entourage of guests in wedding dresses. My dad took one look at them, walked away, and had her friends kicked out. Now, my entitled grandmother stayed because trying to get her kicked out would cause the cops to be called and more headaches than they would like. The wedding continued, and my entitled grandma wasn't allowed in any photos. And that was just my dad's first wedding. My mom says divorcing my father was such a relief because she could finally get away from his awful mother. My dad, on the other hand, is stuck with her until she passes away, and so is his new wife, who is my stepmom. Now, my dad and my stepmother got engaged in the year of 2020 during the New Year's. They had planned on a one-year plan, mostly because they wanted to get it over with, since they've been together for 8 or 9 years already, and getting married at this point was a formality to tie things together. When they announced the date, they announced it to be on my entitled grandmother's birthday, and at first she was ecstatic, but then she realized that her birthday would have to be shared. In private, she complained to her gaggle of cronies about having the wedding on her birthday, but then COVID hit and the wedding got pushed back until about 2022 for a different date, and instead it landed on my stepmom's mother's birthday. Her mom had a long past and figured that this was a good way to include her. Well, this ensured the usual nagging. How dare she make it about her mother? My dad at this point grew a backbone and began putting his mom in her place. Perhaps it was his sobriety, or perhaps it was because he's been through one wedding and he is not doing it for a third time. My entitled grandmother tried to do the usual butt-in thing and make things all about her. It just simply had to be her way. But with a few tongue lashes, it stopped. Well, that is until it came to me. Over COVID, I gained about 50 pounds due to stress and pain. I had a lot going on that resulted in me being overweight. I have since been turning that weight into muscle, but I also still had a lot of muscle definition back then too. In fact, I had huge swimmer shoulders that made it difficult to find some dresses. My stepmom wanted simple black dresses. We could decide the style, but it just had to be black with open shoulders. I corresponded with my stepsister to see what she would wear, and we would get the same dress. Well, unsurprisingly, my entitled grandmother wanted me to get a different dress. A dress that was frilly. A dress that wasn't black, but was rather gold and was cream. Well, I immediately declined this opposition. I knew what she was trying to do. The only reason she was even dress shopping with me was because I was 13, couldn't drive, and didn't have my stepmom's card like she did. Well, I picked out the same dress my stepsister did, and I got it in black. They needed to special order it because they didn't have my size. They had one smaller and one bigger, so I was able to see what it would look like approximately. My entitled grandmother did not like the dress. It was a simple flowy skirt that hit the ankles with a really pretty design, and for the most part, it was really modest. The only thing really shown was my face and my arms. Well, my entitled grandmother didn't like that my arms could be shown because people would see my strawberry skin, my muscles, and it made me look like a man. Apparently, it made me look like a log and I was too fat for it. While she put me down, I just didn't care and I sent it to my stepmom and she just loved it. I then told my entitled grandmother that this is what we're going with and that was it. Well, when we tried to put in the order ticket, she tried to order a different style in the color that she wanted. Well, I already talked with a worker and I told them, hey, she's gonna try and pull this weird stunt, but just go ahead and put down what I say and not what she says, because she will ruin this wedding. Well, I think the worker didn't take it seriously at first until she started seeing how my grandmother was acting. Well, finally, the dress shopping was done, and then it was shoe shopping for a pair of flats. My stepmother had a very specific style in mind, black flats with a pointed toe. And honestly, in general, I do have trouble finding shoes. For reference, I'm a size 6 in women's with wide feet. So we had to go to 3 different places just to find the shoes. And the entire time, my grandmother was angry and made weird comments about my feet. I don't know why she was angry, like I have my dad's fat feet and my mom's shoe size. She finds the weirdest things to comment about. After shopping around, my grandmother wanted to go to lunch, even though I didn't, so I told her that I had an obligation. She then proceeded to call me a disappointment for not thinking of my grandmother, and that she hasn't seen me in a while, and that she deserves to have dinner with her grandchild. So you know what? I just walked home. I didn't want to deal with her, and the shopping plaza we went to was barely a mile away. A few weeks later, my dress came in, and we needed to go back to get it hemmed. I planned on just going with my mom, but in true entitled grandmother fashion, she butted in and took me instead. But I just simply bowed my head and took things in stride. During that time, I was experimenting with my hair, and I talked to my stepmother about how she wanted my hair because I planned on taking a lot of length off and dyeing my hair. Now, my stepmother was always like, of course, do whatever you want. And so I got this boyish cut, and I had it dyed to a cool red color to match my mom. Well, of course, my grandmother did not like this. She said that I looked even more like a man, and I was like, what are you talking about? While also saying, well, how dare you do something so drastic with your hair? You need to consult me first. I took in her comments about my hair in stride, and I just ignored her. Well, finally, I didn't have to see her until the wedding once everything was done with. And eventually, the wedding came around. My grandmother complained about the decorations for a little while commenting about how everything is too vintage. The hotel wasn't a church, and how dare she not get married in a church. But again, I just ignored the comments, and I didn't bother telling my dad or my stepmom because I just wanted things to go smoothly and not to bother them with anything. We went out to get our hair done, and while I was in the seat, I could hear my grandmother commenting about how I destroyed my hair, only for my stepmom to shut her up and change the subject entirely. During the wedding day, everything was relatively quiet with her. A few comments here and there, but she was cordial and almost nice. When it came time to put the dress on, etc., we learned that we got me the wrong size pantyhose. We accidentally got the child size sizes and not a woman's large size. And I was just gonna go without it since the skirt was long enough where no one would notice. But then my grandma offered me a pair of hers with a comment of saying, "I highly doubt they'll fit someone your size, but you can try." And unfortunately, they fit. The wedding thankfully went smoothly. She didn't wear white, but she dressed like she was going to a funeral and was somehow in mourning and not attending her son's wedding. The reception came around and we ate, and she made a few comments about me not being ladylike and how I should have got the salmon and not the steak. The night went on a bit quietly, and the reception was to go until about 11 o'clock with an hour for cleanup. One thing about me is that I tend to go to bed early at around 8 o'clock or even 9 o'clock. We were staying in the actual hotel, so it's not like we had to walk or drive. Now, I mentioned wanting to go back up to the room to go sleep, but my grandma denied me. Eventually, 10:30 came around, and admittedly, I was cranky and very tired. I'd been awake since about 5:30, and I wanted to go to bed. My entitled grandmother eventually came around, and she said that I ought to be grateful to be a part of this wedding, and that I should learn to be more ladylike. She then said that I should learn to just suck things up. Well, it took my crying and begging to go to bed for my stepmom to step in and tell her to give me a room key so that I could go to bed. I finally changed and I went to sleep, only to have the worst night's sleep of my life because my grandmother kept waking me up. She woke me up when she came in at 11 to come help clean things up. I then went down, cleaned things up, and went right back to sleep. But then she woke me up almost every single hour of the night to turn around or to tell me to stop snoring. By the end of it, I was so tired, and I slept the entire 7.5-hour car ride back home. Now, apart from her, everything else in the wedding was beautiful and fantastic, and I honestly hope I don't have to deal with her in the future because the way she acts is truly obnoxious. Yeah, your grandma sounds like a piece of work. For those who are unfamiliar, this is some more contextual backstory to a story we've covered previously on the channel, and now that we have the full picture, like honestly, I can't blame anybody for not wanting that lady around. She showed up to your dad's wedding in white, and then she literally tried to change everything about every wedding that she's been to. And it's like, dude, how obnoxious can you possibly get? Because your grandmother sounds like a piece of work, and hopefully for your sake, I hope you don't have to deal with her anytime soon as well. An entitled Karen gets thrown out of the store I work in because she refused to put on a mask no matter what, stating that she was exempt from having to wear one, demanding that we bend the rules to her specifically. But after she gets kicked out of the store for being an absolute nuisance and refusing to follow the rules, she calls us back and threatens to sue us. And I am honestly blown away by the level of entitlement that this lady exhibited. Here's what happened. So this story was from back when the sickness was at its peak. I will first preface this with an explanation of the laws here, as laws change in different locations, and I want to avoid people making assumptions on what is or isn't correct for the laws where I live. When it comes to where I live, when masks are mandatory, you can get a fine for not wearing one when you're supposed to. Some people are exempt, but that exemption just means that the police can't fine you for not wearing a mask. And this exemption is also just a verbal thing. The government doesn't issue certificates or even a license or anything else stating that you have an exemption. You can just say, hey, I've got an exemption, and that's that. A police officer can't fine you. In the rare case that they still fine you, you can fight the fine. Then it becomes an issue of proving the exemption. But as long as it's valid, it's not a battle. The fine will be instantly revoked. However, it should be noted that private businesses here can refuse service to anyone for any reason, which then leads to the entitled Karen of this story. So here we go. The owner of the shop I work at happened to be in that day. He had a newborn son, roughly a month old, so he was very protective and enforced the mask restrictions to the extent that he could. And that's about when the entitled Karen walks in without a mask. He politely asked her to wear a mask, but she refused. If you're not going to wear one, I'm going to have to ask you to leave since you're not complying with our regulations. And that sent her over the edge. I don't have to wear a mask. I have an exemption. She shouts this out as she pulls out a piece of paper. As mentioned, no government body here issues any kind of paperwork that says that a person doesn't need to wear a mask. You either have one or you don't. It's all verbal. For example, you don't get a certificate just to prove that you have asthma or whatever. It's ridiculous, and this Karen honestly thought that her fake printout would fool anyone. Even if the government did issue physical exemption notices, they definitely wouldn't print them on plain paper. At the very least, it would at least be laminated. The owner didn't mention the mangled paper that she pulled out from her handbag. He just reiterated that she had to leave. He mentioned his newborn baby, explained that having an exemption doesn't make you immune, and that she can still spread the virus. After a couple more back and forths, she eventually just left in a huff. And I was lucky enough to witness the whole thing, and I thought it was hilarious. But my luck ran out as the entitled Karen called back that very afternoon, and I was the unlucky human human that picked up the phone. I'll break down the conversation as efficiently as I can. I answer the phone and she says, "Hi, I was in today when I was rudely kicked out of the store for not wearing a mask, despite having an exemption. Unless you sell me what I came in for at a steep discount, I'm gonna sue you." I cut her off there and I said, "Let me stop you right there. I witnessed the whole thing and you have no grounds for a lawsuit. Firstly, your fake piece of paper doesn't mean anything. Secondly, as a private business, we have the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason, even if you did have an exemption. That only protects you from getting fined, and we are well within our rights to refuse your service." And before I could continue, she starts screaming about how she has a right to shop anywhere she wants, screaming for me to stop explaining what I'm saying and that she shouldn't have to wear a mask. After listening to this go on and on, I just slammed the phone into the receiver as hard as I can about 3 times. I wasn't going to get into a screaming match with this entitled Karen. I look up from my desk though, and I see the owner staring at me. I explained to him that it was the same lady from the store earlier, and he completely understood. Then at that moment, she rang back up again. We have caller ID and I recognized the number immediately, so I picked it up and said, "Are you ready to calm down?" She responded by saying, "You're extremely rude and I demand to speak with a manager." I responded by saying, "I am the manager." She was stunned in silence for a second. I then said, "You could speak to the owner if you want," to which she promptly said that she did. At that point, I realized that she had no clue that she spoke to the owner in the store that morning, so I passed the phone to him and he had a chat with her. I was hoping he would have some fun with her, but I suppose he was just more mature than I am. I won't get into what they spoke about because I only heard what he had to say, but it ended up with him saying, "I won't stop you from leaving a negative review online, but we are a small business, and that stuff really can affect us, so I really hope you could reconsider." At the end of the day though, it was all empty words on this entitled Karen's part, because she never did sue us, and in the end she never did leave that negative review, and hopefully she just never comes back ever again. What an absolute psychopath. Talk about being incredibly entitled and acting as if the rules don't apply to you. Like seriously, if you go into a store and they're asking you to wear a mask, then you definitely need to wear one. And this is especially important since this story happened during the peak of the pandemic. I mean, is it really that hard to put on a mask and follow the rules? Some people really are convinced that the world just revolves around them, and that's unfortunate because that level of entitlement really will get you absolutely nowhere. So hopefully this entitled Karen learned her lesson, that no, she can't just demand to get whatever she wants and expect people to bend to her will, especially if she's going to be that rude and disturbing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My boyfriend still lives at home with his parents at the age of 40, and I honestly don't know what to think of it, and I don't know if this is a breaking point for our relationship. So I am dating a guy who just turned 40 years old. We get along great and have been together for around a year and a half. It's kind of hit me that it feels a bit strange that he lives at home with his parents, as well as his younger brother. I'd understand if he was somebody who was looking after his parents or something like that, but the rest of his siblings are either married with kids, and I think they have their own home too, or they are in their early 20s, so I suppose it doesn't seem as bad for them to live at home. My boyfriend also can't cook. He can't use the washer, so I'm assuming his mother cooks, cleans, does his washing all for him. I know this because he'll say things like, I'm gonna see what's been made at home for dinner, and stuff like that. When getting to know him a year ago, he'd talk about living at home, but I thought maybe it was just him and his parents, and he takes care of them or something like that. Not that his brothers live there as well, and sometimes his nephews, and also that my boyfriend doesn't have any lifestyle skills, even though he has a secure job and makes enough money to not depend on anybody else. It is a bit of a turnoff, to be completely honest, of how he really is not that independent. He has also shown his immaturity as well, and this comes out when we have a debate, and he absolutely won't change his mind or even apologize if he's done something wrong, but I'm guessing it's due to his age and the fact that he's had that mentality for so long. I really am not sure that anything would make him change it. I don't know if I'm overthinking, but I feel like he is dependent on living with his parents and that he might be too afraid to live on his own or something like that. There has been times where he wouldn't want to stay at my house because he doesn't want to walk into my house the next day or go out too late that night in case they think that he's been somewhere. I mean, he is a 40-year-old man, and it's not like they don't let him out or anything like that. It just comes down to the fact that he doesn't want to do that. So I find that part very strange. Like, let's say he comes over to my place. We'd watch movies, we'd spend some time together, maybe like 1 to 2 hours, and then he would leave because he needs to get home for literally no other reason a majority of the time. Like, Like he just doesn't have a solid reason why he doesn't want to stay out later. I feel like he thinks he's a man's man because he works out, makes good money, but he genuinely doesn't have any skills or goals or other things to show for it. As in, he's too stuck in his ways and acts like he's somebody that doesn't need to have goals. And he does this in such an arrogant way, talking like he is better than everybody else without really saying it. Maybe I'm overreacting here, but it honestly feels very strange that he's still living at home, and I honestly don't know what to think of this situation. I definitely see where the original poster is coming from. This guy is 40 years old and he still lives with his parents, and I think the original poster has it right. It really would be different if there was some kind of extenuating circumstance surrounding around why he was still living at home, but it seems like he's very dependent on living with them to some degree, and he really just enjoys the security of having somebody at home, or maybe something along those lines. I don't know. It definitely seems like a weird situation in general. He has a stable job, and he's got the money to live on his own and basically do whatever he wants, and yet he still lives at home and seems so dependent on his parents. So it does make sense, in my opinion, that you would be worried and concerned about this aspect of his life. Also, the way he acts and how immature he can be when it comes to like debates or arguments of some kind, in my opinion, is kind of a red flag, if you will. Like, how does he not have the emotional maturity to at least admit when he's wrong or to apologize when he makes a mistake? Like, is it really that hard to say, I'm sorry and I'm gonna do better? Especially when there's something legitimate that you did that's really wrong? Either way, it really does sound like the original poster is trying to find the best fit for some kind of future spouse. And if this guy still lives at home at the age of 40 and comes off as being incredibly emotionally immature, then I think some work really needs to be done if you ever see this as an extended relationship. My mother-in-law is angry at my kids that they ate some of her groceries, and despite correcting her and putting her in her place, she decided to still be nasty with me and slam the doors and yell at my kids. And now I honestly don't know what to do. So I have 3 kids, ages 12, 8, and 4 years old. They are good, healthy children that do well in school. They also love their paternal grandma very much. My mother-in-law came down this month to spend the holidays with the family. She lives far away, so we don't see her often. We have a big home, so I sat her up in a nice room in the house. Shortly after she arrived, she offered me her food card. I declined several times, as my family doesn't need assistance with food. I instead thought that she should just keep it. However, she insisted and said she wanted to buy treats for the kids and that it was Christmas for all, as she puts it. Fast forward to last weekend, and I came home from work. The kids all rushed me and asked if they could have a family movie night and watch Home Alone and drink some hot chocolate. I thought it was a great idea, and so I agreed. So I told them to start making their drinks while I changed clothes. In the other room, I overheard my grandma come into the room and start scolding them. She said,
I knew you would all do this. You've really started something, you know that? I'm never gonna buy hot chocolate again.
When I heard that, I was shocked. So I came out of my room and I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. I will replace it in the morning. After I said that, she just rolled her eyes and went into her room. The next morning, I went to the grocery store before work and bought a bunch of snacks and replaced her hot chocolate that my kids had drinking. I then instructed my children to only eat what I bought and then went to work. Around lunchtime, I started getting text messages from my kids telling me that their grandma wouldn't let them eat the food. They told me that they let her know that I bought them food, but she replied by saying that no, I actually only bought it with her food card. She went further to tell them that they act like they have to eat all the time, which is really inappropriate. At this point, I called her and let her know that I did not use her food card, and that if she didn't want the kids to eat what she had bought, then she should bring it into her room and also not buy them any more food. After I said that, she just straight up hung up on me. Afterwards, I started getting messages from my kids that they were scared and that their grandma was slamming doors and yelling that she is never coming back to our house again. The kids were crying at this point and scared of what their grandma would do. I had my husband call his mother, and I don't know what was said, but when I got home, she wouldn't even look at me, let alone speak to me in the first place. I honestly want her to go home. I'd even buy her the ticket. I don't trust her around my kids while I'm at work, and she is the one that chose to take this issue about food out on the children without even having spoken a word to me about it. I'm not sure if I would have even discovered it if I didn't accidentally hear her yelling at my kids. My husband wants me to just let it go, but I feel like something is very wrong with this situation. The way this mother-in-law was acting in this situation is incredibly inappropriate. If you're a guest at somebody's house, you need to abide by their rules and be on your best behavior. I don't care how old you are. It's so inappropriate to start yelling at other people's kids, especially when they are blatantly not touching your stuff. It'd be different if they were going through all of your things and causing a lot of chaos at your expense. Then, in that case, I really would understand you getting on their case and saying, hey, you need to cut it out and stop touching my food. But in this regard, that just wasn't what was happening. And if anything, this weird grandma was just having some kind of power trip, and thankfully the mom was there to try and put her in her place. And I'm honestly with the original poster in that situation. If you're gonna go around yelling at my kids and slamming doors, all because you're upset that I put you in your place, then I think you've gotta go. So if I was in your shoes, I would be looking at local hotels she can kick it at. That way she can enjoy as much of her food as she wants, and she won't have any excuse to try and yell at your kids. Today I messed up by hugging and kissing a girl that I only just met that night. And I later found out that that girl is actually my best friend's girlfriend, and I had no idea. And now everyone is furious with me, and I honestly don't know what to do. So to start things off, I'm from Argentina, and yesterday my country won the World Cup, and there were obviously lots of celebrations. At night, I went to a small party with some friends. One of my friends invited his new girlfriend and her friends, and I didn't know any of them. When the girls arrived, I saw my friend start a conversation with one of them, and I didn't see him with any of the others, so I assumed that was his girlfriend. The night developed and we got to play beer pong. We were having lots of fun and I got a little drunk, but nothing out of the ordinary. On my side of the table, I was playing alongside two of the girls, none of which were the one I thought was my friend's girlfriend. It felt to me like we all got confident with one another while we were playing. One of the girls stood right next to me shoulder to shoulder, and both of us were making jokes and snarky remarks to one another, and I really thought she was into me. At least that is what I felt at the moment. I guess I must have really gotten confused. Meanwhile, my friend, the one with the girlfriend, tried to get to play on our team, but the girls and I didn't let him play at first, and made some jokes just to try and annoy him. But in the end, we let him play. He got in between me and the girl, and I didn't think too much about it. The game went on until the opposing team had only one glass left. The girl I thought was into me scored the game-winning ball, and this is where the really stupid part comes in, and this is exactly where I messed up. In celebration, I hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. I had just met this girl, and as I'm writing this, I can't stop thinking how on earth I could have been so out of place. That's not like me at all. It would be easy to blame the alcohol, but I wasn't so drunk. All I can say is that I'm a complete idiot. Luckily, the girl didn't take it badly. I guess she must have thought it was weird, but didn't really say anything about it. At the time, I just didn't pay much attention to the whole thing, and I honestly just forgot about it. After that, we chatted and played some other dumb party games, but nothing else of note really happened. I got back home kind of early, and my best friend gave me a ride home. He is not the friend with a girlfriend, mind you. On the ride back, he told me I should be more careful, and that the girl I kissed was my friend's girlfriend. Apparently, he had told the guys he was mad at me for how I behaved. His anger is totally justified, of course. I immediately texted him and told him that I got confused, and I didn't know that she was his girlfriend. He texted back later and told me that he wasn't going to forgive me. Then he blocked me on every social media that we have. Today, I got word from my best friend that everyone is still mad with me. These guys were my only friends. I only chose to go to this party because I felt like I was drifting away from them, and I didn't want that to happen. Instead, I made everyone mad by kissing my friend's girlfriend. I messed up by getting all my friends angry with me, and I honestly don't know how I'm gonna recover from this one. This situation really sucks. You were clearly under the influence and you made a terrible decision. You thought the girl standing next to you was just some single lady that didn't have any kind of boyfriend to account for, and unfortunately you made the bad decision of kissing her on the cheek after she won the game-winning ball in beer pong, mind you. Like, even at its best, that's really not the time to start kissing people on the cheek, especially when you really don't know them in the first place. I think I could win the lottery and I still wouldn't start kissing people on the cheek. So I think that's just a bit of an overreaction, to be completely honest. But it's not an overreaction for the boyfriend to be upset about you. The best thing you really can do is just wait for the dust to settle. They are clearly upset about this in the moment, obviously, but I think if you just give it time, maybe things can settle down and you can have some kind of friendship once again. It's also a little strange that your best friend didn't introduce you to his girlfriend. Like, don't you think that would be important for him to do? But either way, hopefully this all works out for you, because this honestly seems like an innocent mistake, and hopefully this doesn't completely ruin your friendships, since it sounds like you guys go really far back. Today I messed up by not knowing that deleting a dating app does not delete your profile, and now I'm in trouble with a girl I just started dating who thinks I'm still shopping around around while we are still getting to know each other. Here's what happened. So I lucked out and I met a smoking hot, super cool heavy metal girl with gorgeous tattoos through a dating app. She is totally my thing, but I was always intimidated by women like that. She is kind of out of my league, especially since I have a kid from a previous marriage. However, my text message game has been strong, even if my in real life game is quite weak. And this is especially after being married for almost 13 years. I've got a pretty good face, and she thinks I'm awkward but still kind of cute. So we meet once for what the young people call a vibe check, and I think, well, that's that. She's probably gonna ghost me now. My ego is trashed after my divorce, despite it being a year ago and one rebound later, so I have no confidence left inside me. However, the flesh and spirit are still willing in the face of failure, so I still have my apps up, and I fiddle with my dating profile a bit over the next day, thinking maybe I'll do better with the next woman that I date. However, out of the blue, she says that the vibes are good, and then in utter surprise, she says that she wants to hang out with me a lot more. I'm basically like, absolutely. And so as a result, I deleted these applications before our second meeting, thinking that it might be handy to not have these dating apps on my phone. It might be premature, sure, but I was enthusiastic. Fast forward a bit, and after a few weeks, she says she deleted her apps and disabled her profiles. And I say, I did the same, I deleted them. So, at a friend's work Christmas party, people keep asking what I look like and what I do. Now, we are friends on Facebook, but those pictures are heavily curated to show me with my daughter or me in a well-dressed and buttoned-down scenario. I guess she wanted the spicier photos with good angles, not me giving swim instructions to a 4-year-old. So she re-downloads the dating app and re-enables her profile, assuming my stuff is still in her messages. And then boom, not only is my profile still on there, but I had updated the pictures just after our first meeting. Also, mind you, it's about 3 in the morning and she's had one too many, and that's about when my phone goes off. I wake up to her saying, "So, you updated your profile after we met and after you said it was deleted? Whatever, dude, I guess it's okay." And at this point, I'm just confused. I immediately Googled why my dating app profile is still there, even after I deleted it. And yeah, you guessed it, this is a massive fail on my end. And I very quickly found out that just because I deleted the application, it didn't mean that I had taken down my profile. And this wasn't just the dating app that I met this girl on. Literally all the dating apps that I had been on were all still up. So now I'm sitting here sleepless, having done as much damage control as possible, with a girl of my dreams who thinks I'm a serial dater at worst or a straight up lurker at best. I'm pretty sure she probably blasted me to her friends, which I was hoping to meet very soon. So yeah, I messed up pretty bad, and I think I screwed this one up beyond repair. Yeah, that definitely really sucks. You finally get with a woman that you're absolutely in love with and that you really connect with in some kind of way, only for her to get the wrong impression from you pretty much from the get-go. And that really sucks because you finally met someone that you really do like, and it's all probably gonna go up in smoke right before your eyes. So I think maybe explaining to her what happened and saying, hey, it's not what you think. This is all a misunderstanding and this is why this is still up. Something to that extent might be able to save this situation, but I gotta be honest, it's not looking good. And you're right, she most definitely blasted you to all of her friends. And there's a good chance that she probably is making fun of you behind your back. So hopefully she'll understand where you're coming from. But honestly, if she doesn't understand where you're coming from, then this is probably someone you didn't really want to date in the first place. So hopefully overall this all works out. My entitled wife stands me up at the altar for our wedding, abandoning me in front of all of our family and friends and humiliating me in the process, only to then later show up that night apologizing and saying that she still wants to try to get married. And I am so hurt and broken over this, I simply don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I had been dating since she was 19 years old and I was 21. We've been through everything together and basically have grown up together. I've always known that when she really gets panicky, she tends to run away from things. In fact, she used to randomly break up with me and try to run away when we were very young, but we talked it through and got better at it. And she hasn't done anything like that for years now. Anyways, I proposed a year ago and it was hardly a surprise. We had been discussing marriage for years. We both knew we were on board to do this, especially after she finished her master's degree and got a job in my city. I mean, everything was perfect. The past year has been very hectic in planning a wedding, since we're both from another country where grand weddings are the norm, and we had to fly people out and all this other logistics. About 2 to 3 months ago, the nerves really started to hit my girlfriend, and she tried to talk to me about it. it. I will acknowledge my faults here. She did try to bring it up to me that she was nervous, and the whole ordeal of a grand wedding was stressing her out. Ideally, she would have wanted a small destination wedding with a big party afterwards, but due to both of our families requesting a big wedding and inviting all their friends, we eventually just kind of gave in. She was also nervous about the commitment of marriage, as well as the finances and everything that comes along with it. All of this we had discussed before, but I guess she just needed some reassurance. However, in hindsight, I realize now that every time she brought it up to me before that she was anxious, I chalked it up to the normal cold feet people go through and would just be like, oh, it's gonna be fine, and I just kind of brushed it off. I was also stressed out with a lot of work to do before I could take my long leave, as well as planning and budgeting and all this other stuff. We both make very good money, but this wedding was going out of budget, and we didn't want to take any money from our parents. And honestly, all of it got pretty stressful for the both of us. She seemed a little jittery the night before as well, so I told her to just calm down and try to get some sleep. Mostly, I was just very excited to make her my wife, something I have been dreaming of since the day we started dating. She is the love of my life, and it was still hard to believe that she was choosing to marry me. I was the happiest man alive, but it all came crashing down as on the day of the wedding, she completely ghosted me and instead ran away from the wedding. And I was honestly blown away by what happened next. She left me a note apologizing and saying she couldn't do all this, and she just ran on the day of the wedding, mind you. I don't even know where she went. All of it unfolded so quickly, and it was almost like a movie. All our family members coming into my room while I was ready to walk out onto the altar, asking me where she is and all this other stuff. It was honestly pretty traumatic, and I ended up crying in front of all my family and friends. Our parents handled the guests, and all of it while I just went home heartbroken. And when I got there, she wasn't at home. I spent the entire day calling or texting her, and her phone was just switched off. She walked in at night at about 10 or 11 o'clock p.m. and just kept crying and apologizing. I told her to just go to sleep, and I need time to think about everything that happened. I am now at a point where I seriously don't know what to do anymore. She has apologized multiple times and wants me back, and says that she's even ready to do the whole grand wedding again, and she regrets having run away in a momentary lapse of judgment, as she puts it. She knows that she wants to be with me, but she just panicked and got cold feet. I can't imagine my life without her, but at the same time, my trust is completely broken. I don't understand why she couldn't just be more of an adult and tell me properly before the wedding, although she insists that she tried to. I feel completely disrespected and just heartbroken and completely humiliated that I had to go through all of that. I don't know if I should even forgive her. What if she just does this again and runs at some other important event like she did on the most important day of my life? What should I do? That is absolutely tragic, and it's absolute garbage. For context, this lady is 26 years old, and she waits until the morning of the wedding to dip and not show up in the first place. The fact that she tried to say, "Oh, I tried to talk to you about it," is an absolutely insane excuse in my opinion, and is not acceptable in the slightest. Her expressing her anxiety and saying, "Oh man, I'm nervous about this," is not in any way, shape, or form the same thing as her saying, "Oh my gosh, this is too much, I don't want to do this." That would be completely different. But her claiming, "Oh, I'm nervous and I'm a little panicky," without actually implicitly saying, "Hey, I don't want to get married right now," is completely disrespectful to you and the money that you put into this, as well as the fact that her family and your family all came together from different parts of the world just to try and come together for this wedding. She threw all of that out the window when she said, "Nope, I'm not going to show up for this." And then she has the audacity to show up later that night and just cry and apologize, as if that's going to make any of this better. So in my opinion, this is absolutely a deal breaker. And if I was in your shoes, I also would never feel like I could trust her again. I mean, what was she thinking? You wasted all of this money for nothing. She made a complete fool of you, and now she's like, "Okay, now I'm ready to get married." Like, are you kidding me right now? Overall, this is a crazy scenario to be stuck in, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. It also goes without saying that this is a massive red flag, and personally, I don't think I could marry someone who treated me like that on the most important day of my life. Like, that's unacceptable, and that really would be a deal breaker. So whatever you decide to do, hopefully it's for the best, and hopefully you think about yourself in this situation, because clearly she only thought about herself on the day of your wedding and decided to stand you up and humiliate you in front of everybody. And I think that really will be valuable in making your decision moving forward. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My partner of 5 years had an emotional affair with his ex, and after confronting him about that, I'm honestly not sure if our relationship is salvageable, and I don't know what to do. I want to start off by saying that I thought we were good. I honestly thought we were perfect. I saw a future with him. We always talked about building a life together. I just bought tickets and flights for our Valentine's Day trip, as well as for his birthday to go out of the country. Early on in our relationship, I had baggage and trauma from previous relationships, where past partners would talk to other women behind my back. In my other last relationship with another partner, I caught him writing letters to his ex. My last partner and I broke up, and a few months later, he got engaged to the ex that he was writing letters to. Now, my current partner knew all of this, and he was so kind and patient with me, helping me work through this early on in our relationship. Eventually, I trusted him. I really thought he was one of the good guys. He was my rock and my one and only. A few days ago, I had a mini stress breakdown because I found myself realizing I was doing a big amount of the chores and the errands around the house. I was upset at him about that. We talked about the chores and divvying up the mental load, but I also used this as an opportunity to let him know that I'd like more effort and support from him. I also noticed that he has been on his phone a lot more lately, and whenever I would come close to him, I noticed he would turn his phone over or quickly flip through his apps. I also remembered him smiling or laughing and just looking at his phone. I thought it was weird when he addressed all the other issues that I brought up, but not the phone one. I asked again, and he went back for a bit to think, then came over and said it was because he was doing a lot of journaling lately, and it would be embarrassing to show to anybody. And I asked him if he was including me in that statement. We left the argument after that. His family's holiday celebrations were today, and he wanted to go. I was still upset, and I said I wasn't going anymore, and he actually just left without me. Didn't even put up a fight like he usually does. He even left, came back because he forgot his camera, and then went back to it. I had a gut feeling, a very strong feeling inside me, which prompted me to log onto his computer and look through his messages. I was shaking from all the anticipation and the adrenaline, and that's when I saw it. I screamed. I broke down crying. He has been texting his ex, and it was 100% an emotional affair. He reached out at the end of November, and they were talking for about 2 to 3 weeks. At that point, my whole world turned around. He reached out first, and it was friendly at first. He just wanted to get closure. He said he missed the way they were able to talk and joke around. Friendly talk quickly turned into her getting all flustered from receiving messages, as well as wondering if they were secretly soulmates. He used to talk about me in the chat and how happy he was with me. She would then retort with a photo of her current partner. He later said, maybe we just don't talk about our partners for now. I'm not 100% comfortable if I'm being completely honest. And then all of the images and things he would send to me over text, he also sent to her. They were planning to meet up and talk at some point. They even acknowledged in the chat that this may be an emotional affair, and they even actively joked about it. Her current partner knew she was talking to mine, but I had no idea. Looking through the timestamps, the exact same time when I was upset, he messaged her, asking her if she had talked to me. She said no, and he said that we were having an argument and he was stressed. He was more worried about being caught than how I was feeling at the moment. He also told her about the argument, and it just feels weird and not right to joke about or complain about your partner to your ex. It feels very disrespectful. I mean, where was I throughout all this? I'm not proud of what I did, but after collecting all the proof, as well as a 23-minute long video of me scrolling through the messages, I rushed to pack a bag, and before leaving, I threw all his clothes on the ground, as well as his books on the ground and his luggage all over the place. I made sure not to do any permanent damage of any kind, but I wanted him to know. I was so close to blasting him all over social media with my proof, but I ended up not doing that. I wanted everyone to know so badly how horrible they've been and how much they've hurt me, but I didn't want to stoop to their level because I know I'm better than that, and I am much better than her. Their relationship had high highs and very low lows. It was incredibly toxic. They brought out the worst in each other, and she even would get physically aggressive with him. Why would he throw away all that we have for her? I'm so glad for my friends being there for me. I remember that night bawling to her, and one of the things I've said was, well, what if he's texting or calling her right now? What's stopping him from doing this guilt-free or meeting up with her earlier? He must be back home from the Christmas party, right? Why hasn't he called me or texted me to see if I'm okay? I felt like I had all already lost to her. She finally won and has him around his fingertips. The next morning, he finally messaged me. He asked me to talk, and we did eventually do that. He showed up looking pretty bad, with puffed up eyes from crying, and I was surprised that I wasn't teared up as well, because I must have cried it all out prior. We talked for about 6 hours. Even though I was fiercely angry, I gave him the space and the opportunity to explain his side, and I just listened. It's the usual cheater speech. He has been feeling not confident lately, felt like something was missing in our relationship, felt like he never got the closure from the previous relationship, and thus reached out. Intentions were to get closure and figure out what was missing, and to use that to better our relationship. He continued to talk to her because he wanted to make sure before they met for closure, it was on friendly terms. He then missed talking to her. She kept flirting and talking about catching feelings, and he reciprocated. He tried to blame me and say the past year of our relationship hadn't been great. But I pushed back, and I said to him, then why not talk to me or make an effort to grow this relationship? Why look elsewhere? He then tried to flip this and say I made a massive violation of trust by snooping around. And I said, so what? Isn't this justified? Also, would I have ever even known about this friendship if I hadn't snooped around? He said he wanted me to hear it directly from him, which is just great, just so I can get a watered down version of what's really going on. I then asked for his phone, and the real kicker here is while I was in a hotel, bawling my eyes out, no text or phone call came inside of me. He was texting her about what had happened and was asking her for her advice. He tried to make it seem like a good thing by saying that she said he should talk to me tomorrow. And what, you weren't going to talk to me until she said you should? He said he was planning to anyways. So he's just trying to paint her in a better light and justify talking to her. His defense for talking to her was that he assumed that we were completely done as a couple. He reiterated that I'm perfect. He loves me and thinks about me all the time, and we had 90% good things going. And meanwhile, his ex only had 10% of good things. And he truly was just trying to figure out what that 10% was to try and better our relationship. He said he takes full accountability and made a giant mistake, and that he should have went to therapy instead. I told him to block her everywhere. I don't know if he was going to do it anyways, and maybe I didn't give him enough time to suggest it, but I can't believe I had to ask him to do it. So he did it everywhere, but then hesitated once he got to the messaging app. He had the audacity to ask if he could have one last phone call with her just to get closure, but I said no. He pushed back again, and I said you can only text her, or if you do call her, you need to do it right in front of me. He hesitated and waited. I stood up and said you either do that or you leave. I will not be second place to anybody. I deserve to be first. He then sent her a message and blocked her everywhere. But him talking to her after we had fought and seeing how hurt I was, and then asking if he could have one last phone call was extremely hurtful, in addition to the emotional cheating messages. I know I've got a lot going on. I have a wonderful support system, and if I may toot my own horn, I know I'm beautiful, smart, caring, funny, and driven, and I know I won't have any trouble finding someone out there who will see all this in me and not take it for granted. But 5 years, we had so many wonderful memories and adventures. Our lives were intertwined, our friend groups melded, and his family loves me to pieces. Why did he risk throwing this all away? What was he thinking, if at all? And even though I know I will be okay, and I'm not afraid of being alone or adjusting, I just don't know why I really want this to work after all he has done to me and continued to do to me. Do I believe him that he's sorry and he wants to work on our relationship? He looked remorseful and understood what he's done. He's already set up a meeting with a relationship counselor and is coming up with a plan on how to rebuild our relationship and my trust. I'm glad he is making steps to make this right and acknowledge his mistakes, and I want to see if this really will work. But I keep flip-flopping between if I'm being horribly naive and stupid, or maybe this will work and make us stronger than before. But I really do love him, and if with the right amount of time and effort, I know deep down I have the capacity to forgive him. I'm honestly lost. My emotions keep fluctuating between anger, hurt, mourning, and hopeful. What really sucks about this is whether I do leave or if I stay and we work on this, I'm going to be hurt either way. I know I did nothing wrong, and yet I still have to be hurt from all of this, and for a long time. You have a lot more grit than I would. If my partner had cheated on me, and yes, he absolutely cheated on you, I would probably kick them to the curb and say, you know what, I don't want you in my life. So you must really love him and be a stronger person than I would be. Because I don't think I could possibly face my partner if they did something like this to me. I mean, he was so obsessed with talking to his ex-girlfriend once again, basically getting her permission and advice on how to run your relationship. And that's just so toxic. So hopefully this all works out for you, because the way he acted is unbelievably unfair, and you truly do deserve so much better. My female colleague is starting to act weird towards me after we've spent several years being really good friends at work, and at this point I really don't know what to do. So I sit in one office with a married colleague. We are both lawyers for one government department. We clicked instantly from the first moment and became really good work friends and colleagues. We have sat together for more than 3 years so far. We used to talk to each other for multiple hours per day. We went to lunch together, we helped each other work-wise, and we exchanged birthday and Christmas presents. But our friendship existed only at work, and we both were totally fine with that. But this year, everything changed. Our work department hired 2 new employees, 2 young women, and my colleagues started to spend more time with them, and I was totally fine with that. I even introduced her to one of the new girls, whom I have known from a different workplace, because I thought they might become good work friends. My colleague and these 2 other women started to hang out together during work in another office, and I started to notice my colleague also started to change her behavior towards me. After one stupid conflict during which we did not speak to one another for several days, I noticed that she started to look at me differently. She had a big smile whenever she came to work and entered our office. She started to tease me more often, and she would start talking to me about her kids without me asking. And at times, it seemed like she was really demanding my help and attention. She was asking me to come close and to look at stuff on her computer, and she would become irritated when I did not respond to her immediately, stuff like that. However, it was not annoying to me, and it did not affect my work. To be honest, I started to feel afraid that she might be developing feelings for me, but I would never start anything with someone who is in a committed relationship. A few weeks later, she started to become really on and off with me, meaning that she would be friendly on Monday, we would talk as friends again, and she would then be distant on other days, rather talking with the 2 women I mentioned. I thought to myself that she probably replaced me emotionally with the new girls, so the dynamic of our work friendship changed as a result. It started to look like as if she was trying to push me away emotionally, so I just started to mirror her. I stopped asking her personal questions, I started to go to lunch with other colleagues, and much more. One important thing is that recently, she completely stopped asking me personal and even work-oriented questions, and became very easily annoyed with me whenever I asked her why she is sometimes kind of rude and disrespectful towards me all of the sudden. But questions like this seem to only push her further away from me, so she is actively ignoring me as a result, even though she looks to be comfortable around me. She even said several months ago that she feels the safest with me. Last week, I asked her if she would prefer to sit with someone else instead, and she told me, "Do whatever you want, I don't care." And after that question, she did not speak to me for a few days. She would not even say hi or bye. Basically, she was giving me the silent treatment. Today, she started to talk with me again, but she is still very distant. My other colleague told me that she would prefer to continue sitting with me, but it's quite hard to be around a person who is treating me as if I don't matter to her anymore, even as a colleague or a person. Now I honestly don't know what to do at this point. She is treating me as if she was actively trying to ignore me or punish me for something that was not communicated. It's not affecting me work-wise, but on a personal level, it's pretty triggering, because I liked and still do like her as a friend and a colleague, but she completely changed her attitude towards me. She acts normal around everyone else except for me. It's important to note that even I don't want to sit with someone else, but sometimes it's hard to accept that she simply does not want to discuss things with me in order to have some kind of repair on our work relationship. I'm just giving her space at the moment, and I'm focused on my work and other people there, but it still bothers me how weird things are between us, considering the fact that we share one office. Would there be any way to improve our work relationship? What would be the best thing to do in this situation? What should I do? This seems like one of those situations where you definitely should really just take the hint and move on and maybe find another place to sit at work, because this lady's being very off and on, and most definitely was trying trying to flirt with you. And I bet you the fact that you didn't reciprocate is probably the reason she's upset. And you said it yourself, she's married. And I don't think you should waste your time with someone who's acting like this. And sure, I totally understand that you want to have friends at work. But you know what? You can find friends outside of work and just make that place the place you go to make money. And then you go home and do your own thing. Or if anything, find different people in the office to be friends with. It sounds like you've attempted to give her space, you've tried to check in and be kind to some degree, but she is the one that's pushing you away. And in my opinion, if someone shows you exactly who they are, you should believe them the first time around. So I think you should believe her when she's acting like she just doesn't care about you, because that probably is exactly how she feels. So hopefully you can find a new place to sit at work, and you can find other people to befriend at work. It's unfortunate, and it does happen, but I think you're better off finding another way to be happy at work than to try and rely on somebody who clearly does not care about you. My crazy entitled mother secretly records my therapy session and is now threatening to use it against me in the court of law, all because I said things about her in therapy that she did not like, and now I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my mother never told me that there was now a camera or an audio recording device in the living room. I tried to find it, but it's not visible from what I found. I also had a therapist as an adult, to where my therapy sessions were private and on the phone due to COVID lockdown at the time. This particular session, I was touching on the topic of the way my mother treats me and makes me feel. Without me knowing, as she was at work and I was alone with my kid at home, she recorded the entire session. And this was all without my consent. She came home and then threatened to press charges on me for slandering her name. I told her she had no right to record my private sessions. She then tried to blame me and said, maybe next time you won't do it in front of a camera. And I asked her, what camera is she talking about? And she didn't point to anything. She just said, I put a new camera in the living room. I replied to her and said, my therapy sessions are private, and if you take me to court for what I said, you wouldn't be favored, as you aren't supposed to record somebody and use their private therapy sessions against them. I have a right to my own thoughts and opinions. And if you knew anything about therapy or how I have it set up with my therapist, she wouldn't say anything to anyone unless it threatened mine or my daughter's well-being. She then goes off on this tangent, stating that she's never done anything wrong to me. And when she said that, I wanted to snap. I wanted to yell at her about the years of mental, emotional, and physical abuse, as well as the neglect I've endured because of her. I had to grow up at 5 to care for my little brother because she simply wouldn't do it. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong, but my therapist says that what I feel is going on is how I see it, and it is valid. She should not have recorded my therapy session. It's illegal in the state of Texas to record a conversation that you are not involved in. And she basically broke a law and threatened to use what I said against me. I don't know if my reaction was right, but she refuses to delete the recordings to this day. I'm worried that she may try to take me to court, and while there was nothing incriminating, she says that she might be able to use it as a slander case against me, even though what I said is all 100% true. My therapist could even contest to it, as she has some recordings of what I deal with on a daily basis. Am I in the wrong for telling my therapist how my mother treats me? Because my mother even said, you don't talk about me to anyone, not even your friends. She has even been witnessed on call actively treating me like garbage, and then blames me by saying, you need to stop telling people I'm a bad person. And this is especially prevalent when other people witness it over call as it happens. This is all honestly so distressing, and I simply don't know what to do. The way your mom is acting is absolutely out of line. Therapy is supposed to be a private experience where you can be open and honest about your inner feelings. It's one of the few places where you can be completely honest and there really won't be any kind of judgment. Like, you really can't just say whatever you want to say. So with that in mind, what you say in therapy, even when it's as brutally honest as possible, it absolutely needs to be confidential. Otherwise, situations like this could arise. It's honestly horrifying that your mom would seriously record your therapy session and then threaten to try and use it against you. I mean, what kind of psychopath seriously acts like that? And you said it best. Where you come from, it's illegal to privately record someone against their consent, especially when you are not involved in the conversation at hand. You're just some weird bystander trying to get the dirt on what your daughter's saying about you, and that's just crazy to me. So honestly, it might be time for you to lawyer up. I think talking to an attorney and discussing this with someone who knows the ins and outs of the law would really be your best bet. You can make assumptions of what you can and can't do, as well as every hypothetical that you could possibly think of. But at the end of the day, an actual lawyer probably would be your best bet. So hopefully all of this goes well, because I would be so traumatized if that happened to me. I can't imagine what it feels like to be discussing openly the things that your mother did, only for her to be like, oh yeah, I recorded everything you said and I'm gonna try and use it against you. I mean, if that's not proof that she's clearly guilty of all the things that you said, I don't know what else is. She very clearly wants to try and control the narrative, and just know, I really think that if she does try to go public with the things that you said, this will only make her look like a terrible mother and probably confirm everything you've ever said in your therapy session. Because this lady sounds like a nightmare, and you have a right to privacy to discuss these issues. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My girlfriend has invited me out with her friends for New Year's Eve, but I really want to try and have something more private and intimate with my girlfriend, since this is going to be our first one together as a couple, and I honestly don't know what to do. So me and my girlfriend have been together for a year now. A few months ago, I mentioned that for New Year's Eve, we should do something together as it will be our first. This was a while back, so she may have forgotten, and it was in a passing conversation. Last month, while we were having a meal, she mentioned that her friend was planning a group New Year's Eve party and then going to an event, and that she's going and I should come along too. When she said this, I won't lie, I was taken aback. The way she said it made me feel like she's already decided and I should just come along with her. I was expecting us to do something together, and I was a little surprised, to be honest. I think I said something like, I'll see if I can go, and it was discussed no more. A few days ago, my girlfriend brought it up again in person for us to spend it with her friends, and I may have implied I was up for it. Some other things were going on at the time, so I didn't really give it much thought. She went out with the exact same group of friends on this day that I will be seeing on New Year's Eve. My girlfriend had messaged me saying that her friend had bought her a ticket and sent me the link to get one for myself. I'm not too sure that I'd fully enjoy the event, but it will be a brand new experience. This is because the event will be playing cultural music, and while I am from that culture too, I never listen to any of it, so I don't really know any of the words or the language or anything like that. All of her friends do know the words, and I'm worried I won't be able to fit in. In past relationships, I've always looked forward to being invited out by my partner to meet her friends. I am an easygoing person to get along with, and I really do enjoy it. However, I've never had a girlfriend who has acted this way before. It was enough of a deviation that I noticed it on the first instance that we've been in a group setting. My girlfriend has restrictive parents, so she is used to lying to go out or just to do anything. My girlfriend also becomes a different person when she's in a group setting with her friends. It's almost like she's putting on a performance. I'm a relatively confident person, but it's almost like she forgets I'm there in situations like these. I've noticed this on more than one occasion. It's important to mention that when she went out with this group of friends last week, I believe that she lied to me, as she was meant to be going out with girlfriends. She invited me out, but I said no because it seemed like a girls' night out. But she instead met up with some more friends, including some guys at a hotel room. She said they were walking to the bar and her friend needed to go to the bathroom, and they just by chance bumped into these friends, who she's very close with. My girlfriend just texted me that night that her friend needed to go to the bathroom at the hotel, and that's it. She omitted the part that they all went up to the room to pre-drink at the party. I don't believe her story of just simply bumping into them at all. I clarified her movements, and they just don't tally up with what she is saying. I honestly believe that they plan to meet up, and my girlfriend lied to my face about it. On the night, I had such a strong gut feeling that I was being lied to that I simply could not sleep. In the day after, she did tell me that she went to the hotel room by coincidence, but did not tell me on the night. She also followed the 4 guys there on Instagram, which is fine, but she didn't even mention it. My girlfriend had spoken about some of her friends throughout our relationship, and I've met them once or twice, most of them female, but I've not gone out of my way to follow them back. It's also important to mention that me and my girlfriend have never had a proper night out, as in staying out till like 2 in the morning, and that is since the year that we've been together. She's always had to be home by 11 o'clock at night due to having a curfew, and she drives instead of using an Uber. Our first 6 months together were bliss. I genuinely thought I met the woman of my dreams. I thought I'd found my teammate. However, in the last few months, my girlfriend's behavior has made me think differently altogether. My girlfriend is a self-proclaimed people pleaser, and at this point, I'd never met any of her friends, so I thought nothing of it, but after seeing her with friends, it makes sense. Since these last few months, I get the feeling that my girlfriend is not my teammate anymore. Even though she tells me she loves me, small things have happened where she's not followed through with her word. Sometimes I get the sense that my girlfriend has developed the attitude that she's going to do whatever she wants, and and I simply have to deal with it. I used to trust this girl fully not too long ago. I used to fully believe in her as well, but now I do doubt what she's telling me. I haven't confronted her about the suspected lying about this hotel party yet, because I have some exams after the new year, and I can't afford to stress or have some kind of conflict about this. I plan to truly bring it up to her after that. Even though I've informally sort of agreed to go to this New Year's Eve party and join her friends, can I still tell my girlfriend that it would be nice to spend New Year's Eve together as a couple, and especially because it's our first? I'm worried if I text her this, I'll get a standoffish response, similar to her just saying, well, I already made plans, you do you, or that she's already bought a ticket, which is a relatively small sum of money and it's not really that much. I still haven't confronted her of the suspected lying, and I won't lie, it's honestly slowly eating me away. What should I do? I think the New Year's Eve party is probably going to happen whether you go or not. It seems like she's already got her heart set on that, so I really don't know if there's much you can do in that regard. And you're right, I think it really is unfortunate that she basically decided this all for you. I think if anything, maybe next time you want to have some kind of one-on-one time with her, make the plans ahead of time and say, hey, I've got these plans for us to spend New Year's Eve together as a couple at dinner or at a resort or something like that. Leaving it up to chance will only open this up for something like this to happen in the future. When it comes to her possibly lying, you better make sure you have your ducks in a row when it comes to that, because accusing your girlfriend of lying is only going to end badly in my opinion, especially if you don't have some kind of evidence associated with it. And unfortunately, a gut feeling is not evidence. So maybe in the future when plans are being made, speak up sooner about what you want and maybe give some kind of counteroffer before it's too late, because I think in this situation, it most definitely is too late to have any kind of party or get together for just the two of you on New Year's Eve. My new partner is really boring to me, and I'm unsure if I really just don't like him or if this is some kind of problem with me overthinking. And at this point, I don't know what to do. So I've been dating this guy for about 3 months, and we met on a dating app. We started back and forth for the first month, and then we started meeting in person, as well as going on dates, and eventually starting to hook up exclusively. Sometimes it feels right, but most of the time these days, I just would rather avoid him, and I've even considered breaking things off altogether. My 3 main issues are that it feels like we have nothing to talk about. He's one of those people who calls all the time, but half the time, neither of us are saying anything, because the other half of it feels like banter about nonsensical things. It feels like his go-to jokes are super repetitive, and I find myself losing patience with it, as opposed to finding it funny like I did 6 weeks ago. Physically, I was initially attracted to him, but he just turns me off. It's partially what I feel like is a lack of effort on his part. I always make sure to look, smell, and feel wonderful, and he shows up in the same hoodie and jeans no matter what. He had the audacity to comment on what I was wearing once, like he ever switches it up ever. He usually comes over after work, so I tried to not hold that against him, but he also wants intimacy every time, so I honestly feel like effort wouldn't hurt in this situation. I also get generally grossed out when he burps or spits or farts, and it's killing the attraction for me. The last one is really minor, and it could just be him joking around, but he'll joke about how I'm digging into his wallet because I want to eat out every time he comes over, and completely ignoring the fact that I pay for half of our dates and have taken us to more expensive places, so I have arguably spent more money, and he is already the one coming to my place, so I'm cleaning and getting ready at the same time. For some context, I can't go to his place because his mom isn't the nicest person apparently. Overall, it just feels like a lot of effort on my part, but he is a good person and we have fun when I'm not overthinking it. So it really begs the question, should I stay with him or am I just trying to avoid some kind of relationship and I'm really just trying to pick apart minor things that could easily be fixed? What should I do? I gotta say, reading that first half of it, I really would be under the assumption that you don't like this guy. Like you really dug into him really hard, basically saying that he doesn't try, that he's super repetitive, and you're just kind of losing attraction to him. But at the same time, you end this by saying that he's a good person and that you do have fun around him when you're not overthinking it. So maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe you're just overthinking the situation. And it sounds like you're not communicating with him at all. Like it sounds like you have all these issues that you really do have with the way he looks and the way he's acting overall, but you haven't laid out any kind of game plan with him for him to try and change or to at least see where you're coming from. Like you never know. If you said, hey, could you wear something different when you come by? He very easily could be like, okay, I'll wear something different and go along with it, no problem. Or even if you explain to him, hey, I don't like it when you obviously burp and fart like that. It's kind of unattractive and I don't like it. Or something like that along those lines to maybe communicate to him and share your needs and your expectations in this relationship, like that really could go a long way. Because when it comes down to it and you're not overthinking things, you do have a good time. And that's something you can at least hold on to, especially when it's this early into a relationship. You are getting to know each other still. So if anything, I say keep giving it a try. See if these minor adjustments can be made, and who knows, this relationship could very well still work out. My entitled coworker is constantly harassing me at work, always trying to find ways to put me down and make me feel like an idiot. And I've honestly had enough and I don't know what to do. So to start off, I have some disabilities as the result of a car accident. Nothing you can really see except for a small scar on my face. And that's going to be very important for this story. So my front of house by the name of Ariel had personal issues going on and cussed me out over a misunderstanding. I had been there 5 days. I spoke with my friend and owner and he assured me that this would not happen again and she just had a really bad day. I said okay, and I can understand that. I came back and every shift with her has been a literal nightmare. She has berated me nonstop on nearly every shift. Well, the straw that broke the camel's back is when I came in for a shift 1 hour after finding out that the man who raised me had passed away that morning. I came into work and let everyone know I wasn't at my best, but I would set it aside because I didn't want to call out, knowing they may not be able to find someone that quick to work a shift. From the moment I walked in, she treated me like the biggest piece of garbage. I mean, pure hatred is what I felt from her. I did everything from walk the wrong direction down the hall to being slow to her liking to asking her if I could help her, which honestly just made her crazy. I asked her at one point towards closing if there was anything I can do for her, and she literally looks at me dead in the eye, smiles, and explicitly says, "Don't you think you've been here long enough to know what you're doing? Read the list." And when she said that, I almost lost my mind right then and there. I wasn't asking what needed to be done for close. Everyone else helps each other out on shift, and everyone else, including her, also knows that I have dyslexic aphasia, and that if they just tell me, we can get things done faster. Never mind that I have no clue what she has or hasn't done in the back. Well, at one point, she decides I don't need the food on a plate for my order, that I'm trying to get off the pass, so she takes it and tells everyone she can just wait. She says it like I'm not standing inches away, waiting on her to move so I can get it. The looks that followed were priceless. I somehow keep it together. At another point, I walk out from the back and look around to see what needs to be done, and she says, "There's plenty to do around here. Don't just stand there." And I had just walked from the back. I finally speak to the owner again about this. I explain that I came in when I was grieving a devastating loss, and to be treated just like that was absolutely ridiculous. I didn't deserve it. And sure, I've messed things up since I've been there, even before having a lot on my mind. But this wasn't like that. And even if it was, I've been there a month. I'm not a career waitress yet. I just started. She blamed me for the kitchen losing my ticket and said I should have just known that. The people had been maybe waiting 15 minutes. It's a little long for what they ordered, but we were also slammed. I just can't with this psychotic woman. I've never seen anyone with so little empathy. I wasn't asking to have my hand held or anything like that, but she looked for things to go crazy about. I told them that, and I didn't get scheduled with her this week for the first time, and I honestly hope it keeps up. I love everyone else, and without the stress of her, I actually make less mistakes. I don't feel so on edge. It's been a great work week so far. I've heard her speak to one other person this way before, but the way she talked to me felt overly personal, and I honestly don't know what to do if I ever do get scheduled with her again. That's really a toxic work environment if there ever has been one. She's singling you out because she wants to bully you and put you down, and it's really important that the owner of the restaurant steps up and makes sure that either this lady does not have you on the same shift as her or lets her go in some way, because you can bet that toxic attitude is going to go from you onto another coworker, and it's just going to perpetuate and it's never going to stop. And that's literally unfair for you, and it's unfair for the rest of your coworkers who have to put up with this garbage every day. And I think you're right. You've only been there like a month. How can anyone possibly expect you to have it all together? This is your first waitress job and you've never done this before. So hopefully this works out, and I really hope you don't have to deal with that lady again, because the way she's treating you is completely unfair, and you definitely don't deserve to get treated like that. My girlfriend is a complete hypocrite, criticizing me about everything that I do and then turning around and doing it herself. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. So my girlfriend is amazing. Our chemistry is amazing. We want things to work out, but I feel like I'm going crazy. We've been dating for 10 months. months and spend every day together. She's brought it to my attention that my body language is awful. The things she tells me are kind of outrageous. If I shake my leg, she accuses me of having dirty thoughts. And if there is someone in the room or on the TV, she will come to the worst conclusion possible, if you know what I mean. If I run my hands through my hair, she accuses me of trying to spread my pheromones. If I lunge to grab something in the supermarket, I'm accused of showing off my butt to the people around me. Yet if I bring up that she does the same thing, if not much worse, she flies off like a loose cannon full of denial and accusations. Alas, I adjusted my body language to make her more comfortable, and she stays the same. She has accused me of watching girls dancing on TikTok, and I've proven her wrong with my watch history. I've had my feet held to the fire multiple times on this subject alone, so to help mitigate the problem, I just deleted the app. But then I found out months later that she has been watching dirty pictures online, if you know what I mean, which is really ironic considering all the accusations she made towards me. She has accused me of putting myself on display if I, quote, manspread even a little, yet she will wear the shortest dresses and her underwear is always showing when she sits down, but she'll say, I just want to look pretty, I can't control it. She has also accused me of being too close to people and flirting if I sit beside her friend at the dinner table without saying a word, yet she will be basically breathing down my best friend's neck and basically make it seem like she's coming on to them all throughout the conversation. I've terminated my bubbly personality and distanced myself from people all around me, but she claims that I'm still just being too friendly, while she just wants to get to know my friends. I'm really worried I'm doing these things just to give her control and help her hide from her insecurities, as opposed to me just having some kind of bad body language, whatever that means. I would never have a problem with the things she's doing if I hadn't built resentment from the fights and the changes I've made despite everything. Is it that this change is good and she should take her own advice? Or is it that I'm snuffing out my personality to save her from herself? What should I do? Your girlfriend is a narcissist. She is absolutely being a manipulative lunatic. I mean, how on earth are you even still with her? Literally everything, and I'm not even kidding, everything she said is absolutely insane. No, you shaking your leg does not mean you have dirty thoughts, and I promise you, you're not spreading your pheromones to people around you anytime you put your hands through your hair, and nobody wants to look at your butt in the supermarket, I promise you that. Your girlfriend literally sounds crazy, and she's doing this just to control you, and if you continue to follow along with this, your personality will become non-existent. Any kind of outgoing nature or anything that you like about yourself will literally be stuffed in a box, because she's going to claim you're doing anything and everything all the time. And it's also quite telling that she's telling you not to do these things, and then in some kind of way, shape, or form, she turns around and does it herself. She's a complete hypocrite, and it blows my mind that you're putting up with that. And I think your worry is correct. By going along with this, you're giving her control, and you're helping hide her own insecurities. I'm sure your body language is just as neutral and normal as anybody else out in public. And based on the fact that this has been going on for 10 months, I really just don't see this ever getting any better. So if I was in your shoes, I would seriously be re-looking at this relationship, because I'm sorry, but she sounds absolutely crazy, and you do not need this kind of energy in your life. My entitled mother expects me to drop everything I'm doing, despite illness and a messy divorce, just to provide baked goods for her and her family, and she simply is not taking no for an answer. And at this point, I'm so exhausted and sick, I simply don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for some context, I'm going through a very messy divorce. It's been going on now for nearly 6 weeks. In fact, I only found out I was keeping my house 2 weeks ago, and I managed to get my cats out of foster care and bring them home. Everything I have is going into keeping this house running as smoothly as possible, as I am mentally disabled, so I have to rely on the benefit system. Whenever I can't buy physical gifts, I've always done baking hampers for my friends and family. I usually start at the beginning of December and get huge amounts of hampers made by then. Now, my friends and family know what is happening, and a majority of them said that they will wait till January to get their hampers this year, as I have been scrubbing and sorting everything out, as my ex-wife left me to do everything. Paperwork, finances, house, our cats, you name it. I haven't stopped for 2 weeks until I finally collapsed out of exhaustion and got the flu for the past 4 to 5 days. It has been rough. I've informed everyone I can what's happening, and everyone just wants me to get back on my feet and get better. That is, everyone except for my entitled mother. Like I said, it usually takes me a month to prepare the hampers, and everything in these hampers are completely homemade. The Christmas cake, the gingerbread, the cheesecakes, the brownies and the tarts, and this is just the minimum of every hamper. I usually make 10 to 15 hampers, so you can probably imagine how much work and time it takes to get these things done. It's only in this last week that I've sorted out the kitchen so I could even start preparing to get anything together, and then the flu has struck me down. I've been sleeping most days because I physically cannot stop falling asleep. My entitled mother is coming down Friday night and Saturday morning. I've had to say to her that I am too physically ill and I'm incredibly weak and I just can't do the usual orders in that time frame. I said that I would do what I can, but most of it will come after Christmas now. But according to her, that is just simply not good enough. She said that she demands the bare minimum, which would be 2 full-size cheesecakes, a vanilla bean one, and a caramel one that is homemade. And she also wants 2 full-size Christmas cakes. My mother is not a baker. She doesn't realize how much work just the Christmas cakes alone truly is. Never mind the cheesecakes that she's demanding. The only reason these are essential is because they are being gifted to family members who no one likes, but we have to impress anyways, because it's on my stepdad's side of the family. I'm just so frustrated and tired, and I truly just feel sick, and I feel like she's being entitled and absolutely unreasonable. This was the reason that I stopped doing big batches of baking for her. She always expected a variety of time-consuming desserts, ready for her specifically whenever she decided that she would pop down, and it was my ex who told her to stop last time. I get it's Christmas, but I'm going through a horrendous time right now, and I'm just trying my best. Everything right now is just super frustrating, and I honestly don't know what to do. The way your mom is acting is super ridiculous. She knows that you're sick, she knows that you're just trying to get by and get things done, and she also knows that you're going through a horrible divorce right now. So the fact that she can't see through that, and she can't put her own needs on the back burner and see that, hey, maybe she just can't get this done this year, is super toxic. Like, does she really expect you to get all this baking done all while you have the flu? Like, that's just completely irrational and so uncalled for. This is not a bakery, lady. Like, you just can't pop in whenever you want and say, okay, is the food ready? Like, what are you, crazy? It's not gonna be ready right away. So if I was in your shoes, I would tell her not to show up. Full stop. Explain to her that you are not a free bakery. These things are gifts. They're very generous gifts at that as well. Like, you really pump a lot of your time and effort into them. And it's not something she's entitled to just because she wants to have the perfect Christmas, which is obviously not gonna happen for you. And if they really think about it, nobody should really be getting any kind of food from somebody who is very clearly sick. So hopefully that conversation goes well and you're able to feel better soon, because you are not some kind of short order cook who's just gonna be bossed around into getting some kind of baked goods for your family, regardless of the circumstances or what may be going on in your family's lives, because that honestly is just ridiculous. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled lady and man show up at the restaurant and sit down at a table that is not theirs. And after causing a ruckus and causing problems for me specifically, the front of house hostess puts them in their place and tells them to get lost. And it was truly beautiful to see. Here's what happened. So during last Saturday's evening shift, I had these 2 stray drinkers, a man and a woman, probably in their early 40s, wander from the bar area into the restaurant part and seat themselves on a table in my section. When this happens, we usually just politely explain to people, hey, sorry guys, this part is for dining. If you're just in for drinks, the bar area is right over there. And most of the time, they are understanding. But also, sometimes if the bar is really busy and the tables aren't actually needed at the time, we just kind of let it slide. Anyways, so I tell our hostess that some drinkers sat themselves on my table, and I ask if I should kick them out. She says, nah, it's alright, they can be there for just a bit. The bar at the moment is packed. So I just ignored them and continue to serve my actual guests. Just as I'm approaching the table opposite theirs to take an order, the woman loudly says, excuse me, the table's dirty, and points to a few crumbs in front of her. Can you wipe it up? The way she said it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because it was as if she was accusing me of not keeping my tables clean. But actually, if you just randomly walk in and sit yourself on a table that isn't ready yet or even for you in the first place, then you only have yourself to blame if it's dirty, right? But regardless, I turn to her and I say, sure, I'll just be 1 minute. I turn back to take the order from the other table. Then I went to get a rag and some spray and I wiped it down for them. So I go over and I wipe it down, but before I can leave, the woman goes, there's still food here, and points to, I kid you not, literal air, like there was nothing there. But I wipe it down a second time anyways, just to appease her. And as a side note, it's It's literally Saturday night, and all my other tables have guests on them, and these people aren't even supposed to be here, let alone be getting service from me in the first place. As I'm about to leave again, she literally shrieks, "It's still dirty," and again points to the flawlessly clean table. At this point, I'm dumbfounded, but I figure maybe, just maybe, she's confused by the pattern on the table. The tables are metal, and they kind of have the effect where it looks like it has some water stains all over it. So I kindly explain, "Oh, I think that's just sort of the molted pattern of the table." But then her husband chimes in, who had been inert up until this point, snatches the spray bottle out of my hand and furiously sprays it all over this one spot that she had been pointing out to. He then thrusts his palm out to me and asks for the rag. And at that point, I just kind of silently agreed and handed it to him as he goes in on this table, as if he is literally trying to erode it into a pile of dust. Then he shoves the spray and rag back into my hands and says, "That's how you clean a table." And obviously, the table looks completely the same, and I still completely dumbfounded, just stare at him and then walk off. It then honestly takes me a minute to stop being confused and to realize that I'm upset. I don't really feel like tolerating their existence in my vicinity anymore. So I relay what happened to the hostess, who says, "I'll sort it out," and heads right over to the table. The hostess looks at them and says, "Hey guys, really sorry, but we need this table for a booking right now." The woman says,
Do you need it literally right now?
and the hostess just responds by saying, "Yes." And then this entitled woman responds again, saying,
Do you need it like this second?
and the hostess once again says yes. And the woman that was never supposed to be there in the first place then responded in a very angry tone,
Well, the bar is full. What do you expect us to do? Stand?
and the hostess, keeping the streak alive, looked at her dead in the eye and said yes. So they angrily leave and then stand in the bar for a good half an hour with their drinks, watching over their ex table, probably waiting to see if we actually do use it. We don't use it at all, which is actually hilarious, and I'm fully expecting them to seek a manager to complain about us. But perhaps they had the humility to realize that they were just being complete jerks, and as a result of being a jerk, they were being evicted from the seats they never had in the first place. That hostess is an absolute boss. Yes, the original poster handled all of that with class and ease, but that hostess came in and not only did not take no for an answer, but she refused to take prisoners. They were going to leave and they were going to move no matter what. And it's also comical that they really thought you just were not cleaning the table good enough. People like that drive me nuts, because obviously anybody could clean a table. Like, it's not that hard, and it's not that hard to do it well. You just make sure it's scrubbed down cleanly, and I'm sure you did just that. But this weird man and this weird lady decided to try and take it up a notch and make up some scenario where the table needed to be cleaner. So hopefully these morons don't come back, because they're clearly disruptive and they have no business showing up at this restaurant if they can't have some basic manners. My boyfriend makes fun of me for the reality TV shows that I like to watch, and it's gotten so bad that he started to really make fun of me in front of my other friends. And I'm really embarrassed by this, and I don't know if I'm just being too sensitive or if he has seriously crossed a line, and I don't know what to do. So I really need some perspective. Over the course of 3 years, my boyfriend and I have been together. He's always talked garbage about reality TV shows and the royal family and about the people who care about them. He just thinks it's all pointless. I work full-time and I have a great job, and I am a full-time graduate student about to finish my degree. I rarely have much time to watch TV, but last week I finally sat down to watch some Netflix detailing the life of Harry and Meghan. I didn't know much about them or the royal family before this. I just felt like watching it. My boyfriend saw that I was watching it on Netflix and just kind of said, "Wow," but left it at that. On Saturday night, we were out drinking with a bunch of his friends, and something about the Netflix special came on TV at the bar we were at. Out of nowhere, he said, "Look, those are the people you care about. You care about them, right?" Everyone looked at me since he interrupted a group conversation to do that, and I just laughed it off. But thinking back, it really felt rude, and maybe I could let it go. But now I'm remembering a few months ago, my sister asked me to watch a reality show with her. I only watched one season, but did get into it, and when I was watching it on my day off, my boyfriend said, "I can't believe you watched this. I used to think stuff like this was real when I was in high school. Then I realized how stupid and unintelligent it is." And at that point, I did tell him that it hurts my feelings, and he said he didn't mean to be rude. He knows I'm smart, but was just surprised that I was watching it. And as a side note, not that it matters, but I also wanted to be clear that we have watched plenty of shows together that he considers good, so it's not like I'm refusing to watch things that he likes. I even introduced him him to Breaking Bad, which is his favorite show now. I guess my question is, am I being too sensitive by feeling bothered by these comments? I need to know, because I'm considering bringing it up to him again, but I'm not sure if I'm just being too sensitive. What should I do? So it definitely seems like this is not just lighthearted teasing. If it was, he would probably be doing this in private with you at home. He would probably make small jabs or just kind of say stuff like, oh man, this is so stupid, or something along those lines. I think you get what I'm talking about. It's the fact that he has publicly humiliated you in front of all of your friends, mocking you openly that you enjoy these shows, even just for the entertainment aspect, is in my opinion a line that really should not be crossed. He is using his personal taste to bully you in front of your friends. That's honestly really inappropriate, and that is a serious line that he's crossed. And in my opinion, you really should bring this up and tell him, you know what, the way you're talking to me is really inappropriate, because this went from some personal distaste he has towards this specific type of entertainment towards some weird crusade where he's going to put down anybody who watches those shows. And that, in my opinion, is incredibly obnoxious and completely inappropriate inside of a relationship where both of you are supposed to be able to trust each other. It is a small thing, and I don't think it's a deal breaker if you guys really do love each other, but if he loves you and he's serious about your relationship, he really should listen to you when you tell him that you don't like being bullied for the shows that you watch, and that he really should be more considerate of the things that he says. He's making it seem like if you watch those shows, this is somehow a reflection of your personality as well as your intelligence, but you are literally a graduate student who's just trying to get by and enjoy some kind of entertainment in your downtime between your very busy schedule, which I'm assuming is very taxing. So seriously, your boyfriend needs to get a grip, because the way he's acting is incredibly inappropriate, and there is no good reason for him to publicly humiliate you in front of your friends. My partner gets upset anytime we have any kind of disagreement, and things get so bad that he will openly and vocally put me down in public anytime I might disagree with him. And it's overall really upsetting, and I don't feel heard or regarded in any way, shape, or form, and I don't know what to do. So me and my boyfriend have been in a relationship for around 9 months now. We are kind of long distance, as we are only able to see each other on weekends due to the nature of our jobs. I have been noticing something in the way that we communicate that's starting to bother me a lot. He always needs to have the upper hand on a conversation. If we are discussing something and we disagree, he immediately disengages from the conversation and ignores my point of view. When I try to explain my perspective and why it bothers me that he does this, he makes fun of it, or I'm told that I'm just making a bigger deal out of it than I need to, and that I need to stop being so serious, or he just makes a joke of me being bothered by it. We got into a discussion over messages during the week, and I tried to explain how I feel like my opinion isn't valued or heard, and he just completely ignored it, which also really bothered me. And we also had a recent situation where we were with some friends hanging out, and a topic came up. He made a comment, I disagreed with him, and I tried to explain why, and he looked at me with a very upset face and repeated his opinion again in a way to make me shut up, which just really felt humiliating, like I'm being scolded for speaking my mind. I just excused myself to the bathroom and left the room for some time. I'm just at a loss of what to do. He does not seem to understand why this bothers me or how to even respect my point of view. I don't want him to agree with me. I just want him to see my opinion as valid. It's normal and healthy to disagree on things, all whilst respecting the other person's thoughts. Otherwise, we have a really great relationship. He is a good person, we have common interests, and we are able to have normal conversations, except when we don't agree on something, which makes me question the future, because today we disagree on trivial things, but what about if we decide to have a life together? What should I do? I'm not gonna lie, your boyfriend sounds incredibly toxic, and he sounds super unpleasant to be around. Sure, he probably has some very redeeming qualities, but the fact that he acts like an arrogant toddler anytime you have some kind of opposing opinion is, in my opinion, incredibly gross, and it's a big red flag in my opinion. I mean, just look at how he treated you in public. He repeated his opinion again as if to try and put you in your place. Anytime a partner does that or embarrasses you in public on purpose, or scolds you or puts you down in some way, that, in my opinion, is a very telling sign that this is not normal and it's not healthy. And you said it best. It's absolutely normal and healthy to disagree on things, but the way he's responding to that disagreement towards you is very aggressive, very hostile, as well as borderline abusive. I mean, imagine how this guy's gonna be acting when he's a husband. Like, to me, if I was in your shoes, this honestly just sounds like a nightmare waiting to happen, and I'm honestly predicting a lot of conflicts in the future. His conflict management skill is literally just a to shout you down and make sure you don't have any time to discuss any issues with him. So maybe he's just super prideful or something like that, but it's honestly not your fault and it's something he needs to figure out. So hopefully if you want to stay with this guy, you're able to find some kind of solution, because based on what you have described, this guy sounds absolutely miserable, and you honestly deserve a much better partner moving forward in your life. My best friend's girlfriend is absolutely obnoxious, and she is constantly starting these weird arguments over the smallest of things, both with me and random strangers that may be around her, and it's gotten to a point where I just can't even stand being around her, and it's starting to affect my friendship with my best friend, and at this point, I simply don't know what to do. So I've known my best friend for about 4 years. We met up at my old workplace, and since then, we have this ritual where we meet up at the same bar at least twice a month, just to have a few beers and talk about our lives. She's been with her girlfriend longer than I've known her, and ever since I met her for the first time, I knew she and I would not get along as well. She has a very intense personality, and is the kind of person that needs to be in the right about every topic. She loves arguing. My best friend complains about this a lot, and she argues with both people she knows and complete strangers. It's not a rare thing for her to pick up fights wherever she goes. She's also a huge flirt, and for a while, she was making some very inappropriate comments about their open relationship. Thankfully, she stopped doing that after a few months. There are plenty more reasons why I don't like her, mostly connected to their relationship, as I've seen my best friend cry many times and get anxious and depressed because of her. However, it's not my place to say anything. I tried giving her advice during our first year of friendship, and she quickly shut that down. She doesn't want relationship advice from anyone. I've tolerated the girlfriend this long because I haven't had to see her much. The hangouts are usually just the two of us, and the girlfriend has only tagged along a handful of times. However, things have changed recently. Apparently, the girlfriend recently had a falling out with her group of friends and is now friendsless, as my friend put it. Due to this, my friend has decided to bring her girlfriend to most of our recent meetups. And the thing is, I love hanging out with my best friend because I can relax. I can complain about work, I can talk about anything, and I know that I won't be judged. But I don't feel as comfortable with her girlfriend being present. Like I said, she loves arguing, and she always wants to get into discussions that I have no interest in. She always critiques my lifestyle and complains that I'm vegan, even though I never mention it and I keep it to myself. It also makes me uncomfortable that every time we hang out, she picks fights with random people. I have dodged the last 2 meetups because of this, and once again, we plan to see each other today instead. Fortunately, my boyfriend is included, but he's in the same boat as me. I talked to him about this, and he says he understands, as he doesn't like her either, but that I just have to accept that that girlfriend is a part of the whole package, and that I have to hang out with her from time to time if I want to maintain and nurture this friendship. I'm usually all for communication to solve problems, but telling your best friend you don't like their long-term partner would definitely break the friendship apart, so I honestly don't know what to do. This really sucks. You have a best friend that you really enjoy being around, but their partner is absolutely obnoxious, and I really hate that personality type where they love to argue so much that they will start random arguments with strangers even, just to try and satisfy this urge they have to be right all the time. It is such a toxic personality trait that this lady really needs to root out, otherwise another group of friends is going to turn on her. And I'm honestly not surprised that she had some kind of falling out with her other group of friends. I bet you it's because of the way she acts. So unfortunately, you kind of have to be the adult in this situation and talk to your best friend. Tell her straight up, hey, I don't like your girlfriend being around. She's really aggressive and she really does ruin the mood. And it's not fair for me when I'm just trying to hang out and be friends with you. Unfortunately, I don't feel comfortable around her because she always starts arguments and she's constantly trying to go in on every little thing that I say. And just leave it at that. Her reaction really will determine whether or not you can continue to be friends. Because legitimately, there is no way you can keep dodging and still maintain this friendship. And I think you owe it to yourself to at least be honest and clear the air of what exactly is going wrong with this friendship. Like, you really can't avoid this forever. At least that's what I would do if I was in your situation. But either way, hopefully this all works out for you. Because the way this lady's girlfriend is acting is super obnoxious, and I can completely understand that you wouldn't want anything to do with her. Our entitled neighbors refuse to move their car out of our driveway, claiming that they have every right to park wherever they want, and that they shouldn't have to move it just because it's our driveway. And when my wife threatens to tow their car, our entitled neighbor then tries to hit my wife, only to then get arrested by the police. Here's what happened. So for some backstory, this is a story from years ago when I provided on-site tech work in a niche market all over America. The work is good and pays well, but the traveling can be rough, as I put in well over 100,000 miles a year by car. As I travel mostly by car, during the summer, we pay reliable types to feed the cats and water the lawns, and take the whole family on the road. My kids get to see much of America and parts of Canada and Mexico, and we get to have fantastic vacations, while I get to travel and still have the company of my family after work. The trips normally last 3 to 4 months, and these are honestly just great times. Unfortunately, during the winter, the kids have school, and I get to be away on my own anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 months on a stretch. Some summers this happens too, due to family having other needs back in town, but then they sometimes travel with me for Christmas break too. At least my wife never has to hold down a job while I am working this job. This particular experience happens during one of those times that I am out of town and my beautiful wife is managing things back home. So when we first moved into this house, there is a great family that lives across the street from us. They are very respectful and just really great neighbors. They're upper middle class Latinos. They own a bar and they have fixed up their house in some very nice ways, including building an iron fence around their yard. They have several nice cars, more than they can fit in their driveway. There are always 2 cars parked on the street in front of their house. But they also have a problem. For whatever reason, someone in the local community just cannot accept that a Latino business owner of a bar can make this kind of money without also dealing illegal substances. Every month, the police swoop in with warrants and drug-sniffing dogs and spend hours going through their house and cars with fine-tooth combs. Every month, they leave empty-handed with no arrests, with no tickets and no infractions. Absolutely nothing. And every month, the neighbor comes over to apologize for any disturbance this inspection causes us. They are mortified every time it happens. Every month, we tell them not to worry about it. We always reassure them that this says more about the police than it does about them. Believe me, if they had been doing anything at all, they would already have been caught. They appreciate our support, and as my wife and children are also Latino, we are glad to give it. Finally, they've had enough of it. They sell the bar and the house and move to a smaller town in another state with a larger Latino population and open a new bar there, and I honestly wish them well. This then follows a string of much lower class Latinos in their old house, and none of them live there for very long, and I suspect that there may be a landlord behind some of this. Some of them are genuinely nice people. We even give 2 broken down vehicles to one fellow who is renting a room in the basement. I decided I was never going to swap the parts that I wanted to do in the first place, and as a result, this man was able to rebuild a single working vehicle and now can travel out of town for work. So that guy especially is just a good person. But everything changed when Macho Rooster moved in, and he lives there for a long time. He is the owner of this house, and this makes him somebody, and somebodies are an entitled thing to be. He struts about in nice clothes and bling. This is his domain. He has declared himself emperor of the street that we live on, and anyone who challenges that claim will eventually rue the day. Almost immediately, we start having trouble with him and his family for parking in our driveway or in front of our mailbox. If the mailbox is blocked, the post won't be delivered. My beautiful wife will take the kids to school or just pick them up and come home to find that she has to park on the street. This rubs her all kinds of wrong, but leaving nasty grams on the windshield is not improving things at all. If they get a shot at our driveway, they simply take it. Weekends are even more fun. Not only is this entire street filled with cars related to this house, but the party and the music is playing so loud, all of our windows shake, including the ones in the back of the house. If that is not bad enough, it keeps up until 3, 4, or even 5 in the morning. He has bullied many of the neighbors with his macho posturing. They won't call the police with a noise complaint out of fear. We call, and they just turn it up even louder after the police leave. Yeah, he's a real class act, this one. So this day, my beautiful wife returns from picking up the kids from school, and their car is in our driveway once again. What's different this time is the young lady sitting in the car, waiting for something or someone. My beautiful wife parks in the street, gets the kids in the house, and then comes out to have a chat with the young lady. It goes something like this. My wife walks up and says, "Excuse me, I need you to move your car off my property. You have no permission to park here." The young lady immediately gets an attitude and says, "Excuse me, my uncle said I could park here, so you can leave." My wife then said, "Your uncle doesn't own this driveway. He can't give you permission to park in my driveway. That's not how it works." But this young lady didn't seem to get it, as she just said that she has every right to park here. At this point, she then gets out, locks the car, and walks across the street. My wife then said, "I can have you towed, you know." The young lady then turns around and says, "You wouldn't dare." And this just goes to show how little this lady knows my beautiful wife. Not only does she dare, she has almost done it several times already and wanted to give them a chance to be warned. Well, now they've been warned. But before she calls a tow truck, my beautiful wife has a feeling this may escalate. So she calls the non-emergency police line and lets them know the issue she is having with our neighbors. When they get the address, they actually say, "Oh, it's them." She is looking for a number for a tow company when there comes a knock at the door, and it's the main man himself. It's Macho Rooster, and right now he is huffing and puffing. My beautiful wife is absolutely fearless. She opens the door and confronts him full on. Macho looks at her and says, "How dare you tell my niece she can't park here? I told her she could." My wife then says, "What makes you think that matters? You can't give permission to anyone to park on my property." Macho Rooster then puffs out his chest a little bit more. "Look, little lady, you obviously don't know who you are talking to. Whatever I say goes, and if I say it, it happens." Now, after he said this, my wife actually started laughing at him. He is actually much shorter than her. She says, "Look, little man, that macho garbage doesn't fly here. Maybe where you're from, you're a big deal and that stuff works. But where I come from, the men I talk to are afraid of women, not the other way around. We know what rolling pins are good for, and we are not afraid to use them. I've got a nice marble one in here. Would you like to see it?" This obviously did not suit Macho at all. He starts sputtering near incomprehensible bits of phrases that include some snippets like, "How dare you?" as well as, "Nobody's gonna talk to me like this," and so on and so on. Now, at this point, my beautiful wife takes a stance that is a quick reaction away from demonstrating a beautiful soccer kick to Macho's low-hanging fruit, if you know what I mean, since she can see that he's about to use something other than his words to get his point across, and she is clearly ready to defend herself. But she can see something that he in his sputtering rage cannot, and that is the police car that had just pulled up behind his niece's car. So as Macho's fist raises over his head to somehow make some kind of strike against him, she decides it's worth playing the poor victim and taking the hit. Instead of striking the first blow, she cowers just a little and cries, and tries not to laugh while doing it. To her amusement, the blow never lands. Officer Friendly breaks the speed of light when he sees the fist go up. He's out of the car, over the hood, over the chain link fence, and has Macho's fist in his grip before it can take a swing at her. Very shortly thereafter, Macho is shown a new kind of bling, a set of nice silver bracelets, as well as a new ride in the back of a cruiser. Other police officers have now arrived, and my beautiful wife is the perfect little victim. She is so afraid of him, and what could he do to her and her kids? Her being there all alone at home while her husband's traveling for work? She believes her performance was honestly Oscar-worthy. I find that personally very doubtful, but it's good enough for the intended audience. The niece is forced to move her car off of our property. Macho is not seen in the neighborhood for nearly a week. There are some apparently complicated issues that make this much worse for him, but the police are not free to disclose, and we honestly just don't care. For the rest of the time that he lives across the street from us, Macho never acknowledges our existence ever again. He also never allows any of his people to park in our driveway, as well as in our mailbox or anywhere near the front of our property. We only have to deal with all-night music on Friday night, but the first visit from the police results in the music going off permanently. Yeah, we call the complaint in. Under his ownership, the house is not properly maintained. It eventually falls into disrepair, so Macho sells it. I suspect to buy another one just to run down. It's the opposite of flipping homes. But overall, I'm proud of my wife, and I hope we never have to deal with these people ever again. What a crazy story. Like, this guy really thought he could fight this woman just to try and get his point across. It's also simply not fair considering the fact that he was absolutely in the wrong, and his niece should have moved her car right away. Like, who is he to say who can and cannot park in her driveway? He can't just make that call out of nowhere. That's just crazy. And how entitled do you have to be to try and intimidate your neighbors into basically doing whatever you want? Like, that's absolutely obnoxious. So hopefully the time in jail taught this guy a lesson that you can't try and strike other people or try and intimidate them just to get what you want, because that literally will never result in anything other than you just getting arrested. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Today I messed up by spending the night with an old friend and realizing that I love him a lot more than just as a friend, and right now I don't know what to do. So I met a guy by the name of Rob in our final year of college. We quickly became friends and spent some time together in classes and around campus. us. Nothing ever happened, but I always thought he was attractive and funny, and our personalities gel like crazy. Anyway, college ended, and we both went to universities across the country from one another. We had relationships, breakups, new jobs, and independent adventures. We spoke a couple of times a month over text messaging, and he eventually moved out of the country for work. Lockdown eventually happened, and while he was away, our texting increased, and we would eventually start speaking a couple times a week, and I always message him when I'm drinking or doing something that I know he would love. He always messages me back when he finds something I'd find funny as well, such as sending me a meme or something along those lines. He came back home to visit a couple times in the past year, and each time we met up and had a few drinks. The vibe was always immaculate and full of laughter, and being physically near him felt like I was at home. I've never told him that he was attractive, and vice versa, but if I'm picking up cues like I think I am, there is a mutual liking for each other. On Christmas Eve, we decided to hang out and do a pub crawl. I picked him up as his parents live about an hour away, and because he's just visiting, so he doesn't have a car he can drive. Immediately, things go right back to where they always are with us. Kinda flirty, no awkwardness, and just having a good time. Well, the drinks are flowing, and at one point, he goes to the bathroom, and another friend of mine, who was also there, said, "He seems really lovely. Is this a date of some kind?" And when they said that, I was immediately defensive. I started saying how we're just old friends, that nothing would ever happen between us. However, as the night went on, we were getting closer, and a part of my brain just said, yes, you do want to date this man. The night was winding down, but we are both a bit buzzed, and so I asked him how he's going to get home. He said he would just walk or take the bus, which doesn't make any sense because it's a 20-mile walk and it's 3 in the morning, so there are no buses. He could have gotten an Uber, but the surcharge alone would be ridiculous. So I said he could just stay at my place. We got a ride home and stayed up a little longer drinking and talking, and during this he's holding my hand, and we have moments of just silence and eye contact. I set up the sofa so he could crash there, and we spent the night together, and it's not what you think. Nothing happened, if you know what I mean. But we did snuggle, and there was some spooning and forehead kisses. But honestly, the way he was holding me felt so good and natural, like something I didn't realize I always wanted. During the night, I told him I'm so glad I met him, and I said to him, even though we don't say this, just know that I love you. He replied back that he loves me so much. He then gave me a big squeeze and pulled me closer to him, and we just went back to sleep. In the morning, my family came into the room, and I made the introductions. My family knew him from college, and I do talk about him sometimes, so it wasn't actually too awkward. Anyway, we were still so tired, and finally having access to an empty bedroom, we ended up napping just a little bit longer. I felt like there were times that he wanted to kiss me, and there were times that I just wanted to do the same. By this point, my family are being quite loud downstairs, and I realized that this can't go on forever. It's Christmas morning, and I need to open presents, and he needs to go back to his family. I convince him to get up, and we have a short but lovely conversation with my family, and I drive him home. We were both a little giddy with a hangover and excitement, but we chatted and laughed the whole journey. We had a little hug as he got out of the car, but immediately I started feeling like this is it. I'm not going to see him again for who knows how long, as he's going abroad in a few days. The reason I think I messed up is that I am in love with this man, and I just can't tell him. I know myself, and I would not be able to handle a long-distance relationship, and I also would hate so much to lose my friendship with him by telling him that I really, really love him, and then for him to just turn around and say that he doesn't feel that kind of love for me. I cried on my way home over thoughts of loss, and how if I just realized how I felt sooner, our lives could have been so different. I'm saying this all not knowing how he feels, but in my heart, I know he's a person I want around forever. What should I do? I mean, honestly, it's never too late to just move forward and say, hey, I like you, because it sounds like you two really do like each other a lot. I mean, you literally spent the night cuddling and spooning and holding each other all night. Like, I don't personally know too many friends that would do that unless there was something very intimate or close between the two of you. So I really don't see a problem with you approaching him again and saying, hey, let's make this more than just friends. And the worst thing that could happen is he says no. I really don't think he's going to push you away for you saying, hey, I like you. By itself, outside of how you feel currently, it sounds like you have a really strong friendship with this guy. So you never know. This really could be a good thing waiting for you. And you don't know if long distance dating would work out. Like, it definitely could be something that could work in your life. So personally, I say go for it, because I'm pretty sure this guy's into you, and it would be better to just go for it and accept whatever result comes your way than to wait on the sidelines and regret not doing something in the first place. My coworker and I were falsely accused of making fun of a customer and his partner. bar, and as a result, we got $0 for a tip after this couple was served over $100 worth of drinks. And I honestly have never been more confused in my life. So I'm a bartender at a small classy bar that seats about 45 people. We make craft cocktails, and out of 50 drinks on our menu, only 2 are pre-batched because they have to be barrel aged. The rest, plus off-menu drinks, are made per order. People in the city know us for our cocktail program, and we get a good amount of regulars and recommendations because of it. We also do buyouts for private events, so needless to say, we are pretty busy. One time, we had a buyout for an after-wedding drinks occasion between 4 to 7 p.m. After the private event, we opened the doors to the public. People started coming in slowly, which was fine because my coworker and I needed a little bit of a break after that party. Our first customer were a couple in their 30s who apparently had been to the bar before but haven't been back in a long time. His face as well as the partner's face looked familiar, but I couldn't really remember them from before. They said they came for their partner's birthday. They ordered their first round from me, the second round from another bartender, and sort of bounced back and forth between the two of us each round. My coworker and I thought it was an easygoing interaction. He even made small chit-chat with us while ordering. It was slow, so my coworker and I had plenty of time to clown around. He and I are good friends outside of work, and we like to laugh and joke around with each other. At some point, he and I started laughing. It's a small bar too, by the way, so it's pretty easy to see if somebody's laughing or if they're having a conversation over in the corner. We were talking about espresso martinis and how much we detest making them, and we were just laughing about it in general. Please also note that no one at the bar had ordered one, so we were not talking about anyone in particular. This was just a general statement, if you will. We also had a projector on one of the walls that plays black and white films in the background, and it's often a focal point for most folks. It's also sort of a habit to look at the movie when nothing is going on, so he and I were looking at it while we were standing next to each other and just talking. The couple from before also just happened to be sitting at the table nearby. Now, this couple's partner never came up to order. He himself ordered for the both of them each time. After about 3 drinks each, he finally closed his tab and took to his table. Typically, people just sign there and then leave. We would not have thought much of it, but when we took his tab, he said he heard us laughing about him and his partner. Since my coworker and I were still in a silly mood, and since we thought our interactions with him had been pretty easygoing, we just thought he was joking with us, so we laughed it off and made a couple of jokes about the espresso martinis. He took the check to his table, signed, and then left with the partner. We then looked at the check and he wrote $0 on the tip line, even though there was $100 on the tab. My coworker and I were so confused. We genuinely thought he was joking with us. The next day, our manager talked to us and said that someone left a note on the Square app, which none of us knew people could do. He wrote that the bartenders were making fun of him and his partner the entire time. I had conflicting feelings after this. I was both annoyed and genuinely felt bad that 2 people thought we were laughing at them on a special day. I didn't care about the money. To me, it's more about our morals and intentions being completely misinterpreted as malicious. Even though this happened about 6 months ago, I still haven't seen them since it all went down, and honestly, I just feel kind of bad about the whole scenario. I really would not feel bad about this at all. I mean, you know the truth of the situation. You know for a fact you are not making fun of these people at all in the slightest. You are probably just enjoying your time of spending time with your coworker and just trying to joke around and laugh a little bit, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, especially in customer service. Like, sometimes you really just gotta laugh and have a good time just to make the day go a little bit faster, especially if there's bad customers you gotta deal with throughout the rest of the night. So the problem is definitely not with you. It's with this guy and his partner who clearly are just super sensitive or something along those lines, and they made some weird assumption without ever trying to clarify what was going on. I mean, it sounds like they literally just saw some people laughing and they made the conclusion, yes, they have to be laughing at us, which is honestly really weird in my opinion and simply just doesn't make any sense. So if I was in your shoes, I just would not worry about this. I personally would not want a customer like this going into my restaurant, especially if they're not going to leave you any kind of tip after you serve them well over $100 worth of drinks. Like, seriously, they're the person with the problem, and they should probably figure out what's going on with them before they go to another bar and ruin another bartender's night. An entitled Karen comes into our restaurant demanding food that we don't offer, and when she gets food that she doesn't like, she freaks out and storms into the kitchen to give me a piece of her mind, and I honestly could not be more shocked. Here's what happened. So for context, I had fairly recently started working as a server, and I wasn't fully familiar with our menu, and this was my first time dealing with an insane customer. Luckily, I have some pretty thick skin, and it didn't get to me for the most part, but it was crazy to experience how wacky some people can act. I was working the 11 to 5 shift, and the 10 to 3 server had just left, and the 3 to whenever server hadn't arrived yet. So it was just me in the front, as well as the 2 cooks in the back. The restaurant was empty after the lunch rush when the phone rang. I answered with my typical greeting, and the lady on the other line immediately cut me off, telling me her order that she wanted. But I needed to know if this was a to-go order before I could enter the food items in our system. As I started to ask if it would be a dine-in or takeout situation, she cuts me off again and says, "We'll be there in like 5 minutes, just have it ready," and very promptly hangs up on me. I think to myself, great, whatever she ordered wasn't going to be ready in 5 minutes, but I put it in anyways. But even better still, nothing she ordered was on the menu, which is one of those situations where you think, oh well, when she shows up, we'll figure it out when she gets here. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, in she struts with her sheepish boyfriend in tow. She plops down in a booth and kicks off her shoes and kicks her bare feet up. I walk over with a smile and 2 menus, and she yells at me that she doesn't need a menu. She just ordered on the phone. I let her know that we don't actually offer burritos because this is a burger place. And when I said that, she looks at me and says, "Well then, what do you offer then?" I tried to answer that question by handing her a menu, but she rejects it again. "Do y'all have tacos?" I say, "No, but we do have barbecue chicken quesadilla. Do you want to try that?" She looks at me in annoyance and says, "Fine, whatever." The sheepish boyfriend had taken a menu and decided to order a Caesar chicken salad. I go to the back and I start making the salad, and I can hear her on her phone loudly complaining about me and calling me all kinds of vile things. Their food comes out and she takes one bite and spits it out in front of us. She starts screaming, "Why is there barbecue on this?" By now, the general manager was aware of what was going on, so he went out there to try and handle the situation. He comes back into the kitchen with a quesadilla to make a new one without barbecue. And what happens next absolutely blew my mind, as this entitled Karen crossed a line I never expected. Seconds later, the lady burst into the kitchen and actually said, "Actually, I don't even want it anymore." She then turns to me and starts to scream at me about how she was a server once and decided to give me some advice about how to do my job. Mind you, she went back into the kitchen to try and give me this advice, but I just looked at her with a sweet smile and thanked her for the advice. She then stormed out of the restaurant. Her sheepish boyfriend stayed to finish his salad and came up to the register to pay. He said to me, "I'm very sorry," and left a great tip for me on his way out, which may be the only good thing that came out of this interaction. What an absolute weirdo. This lady not only calls in trying to secure her order, which by the way, that's very strange for a sit-down restaurant, but she also comes in and kicks her shoes off and puts her bare feet on the table. That alone is absolutely disgusting. And unfortunately, it's not that crazy to assume that that could happen, especially when you consider that this lady is a server and she sees weird entitled Karens like this all the time. It's almost like this lady just did not know where she was in the slightest. She not only did not know what was on the menu, but she also freaked out when there was barbecue chicken on her quesadilla, despite the fact that she's like, "Yes, I'll have that." I mean, at that point, you just gotta get a grip, in my opinion. So hopefully, if anything, the boyfriend in this situation can come to his senses and see exactly who he's dating, because it sounds like he's conditioned to the way she acts on a daily basis, and hopefully he can see through these temper tantrums and find somebody who won't embarrass him in public. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. I ghosted my ex-boyfriend because I was tired of his lazy attitude and his lack of motivation in life. And now, after so long, he sends me an email demanding to know why I ghosted him, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I'm a 40-year-old female, and I used to date a man by the name of Mickey. That's not his real name. This was a long time ago, and he used to be my lifelong crush. I was super happy to find out that we had excellent rapport. Our conversations were deep. He showed me a very loving and compassionate side that was completely separate from the shallow jock I remember that he was. So needless to say, we go really far back. We would talk every day. Personal meetings were very fulfilling. I love that he seems super down to earth. Back then, I was still trying to get my goals off the ground because he had unfulfilled ambitions, and this was eating him up. I told him that he needed to get back on the horse and keep fighting. Whenever he asked for advice, I helped him out. For some context, he got fired from 2 of his dream jobs, and he basically lost everything. Eventually, I began to notice that he was incredibly lazy and was unwilling to do anything out of his comfort zone. I mean, he refused to learn any new skills, and he simply refused to do anything to try and build his resume up in any way, shape, or form. It simply did not interest him. I encouraged him to update his certification, and he promised to produce the certificate after he said he was certified, but in the end that never happened, and he just ended up giving me a very vague explanation that led me to believe that the certificate in question wasn't even issued to him. Eventually, he stopped getting in touch. I can't say I was hurt or that I cried, but I was honestly mortified. At that point, I felt like I'd just been played. His subsequent calls were only to ask for favors at that point, and that really upset me. I didn't do anything that he asked because it made no sense after months of low contact with him. I took a long, hard look at our relationship, and I forced myself to understand that he had unhealthy patterns. His last two ex-girlfriends had very serious mental health conditions. They were both diagnosed with schizophrenia and had psychotic episodes. One also had bipolar disorder. He expressed satisfaction during one of our last conversations on how he relied on female friends just to get stuff done for him. He even admitted that he recruited his female contacts to verbally attack an ex-girlfriend on Facebook and to eventually have her profile basically deleted. And this brought me back to really think about his ex-girlfriends. And I felt that quite possibly he would only try to get with them or be around them for his own benefit. For example, one was very wealthy and lived in opulence, but he eventually had to move to his own place when they broke up. And another one let him move in after he'd lost his second best job and she just lives on a good pension. It really seemed like he was targeting vulnerable women just for his own gain. He then sent me an urgent text message stating that he needed my help right away. He was about to go into a job interview, and apparently he needed coaching to try and write his resume, but I wasn't up for it. So I sent him a link with instructions, which he complained were too complicated. And in return, with him acting like a spoiled child, I ghosted him completely. He called, and after ignoring his call, I decided just to call him back and decline his request and just get it over with. He didn't even take my call, but wrote me back that he's actually too busy to talk right now. And after that, I just blocked him on everything, and I made sure that he would never have access to me ever again. I had already outlined his resume months earlier, but I guess he was too lazy to even retrieve that from his email. To be honest, I think he's just a complete loser. His work history is full of inactive gaps, and everything is truly underwhelming. What turned me off was his willingness to let someone else do the hard work for him. He literally had no drive in his life. Fast forward, and I actually have an email from him after such a long time. He wishes me the best, among other things, and is currently begging me to tell him why I disappeared. Now, I hate lying, and I don't think it's okay just to say, I cut you off because you're a complete leech, and I think you're a complete loser. Frankly, I ghosted him because I felt that even talking to him was truly to no avail. I honestly just want to close this door for good and move on with my life, but I'm honestly not sure how to do it, and I don't know what to do. It really sounds like your ex-boyfriend is a complete leech. I mean, it really does sound like he just plays his ex-girlfriends for his own benefit, and that's about it. Like, he doesn't consider anybody else's feelings, and he just wants people to basically run his life for him, which really is not fair for you or anybody else he's ever dated. That's honestly super toxic, and you can do so much better than that. I think you also need to realize that you really don't need to explain yourself to this guy. Like, he does not deserve any kind of explanation in the slightest. If he's not self-aware enough to see exactly how toxic he's been and how he basically takes advantage of people left and right, then he really is the one with the problem, and he should figure that out for himself. Because I bet you're the first person to ever put your foot down and say, nope, I'm not talking to you anymore. And it probably completely blew his mind that you brushed him off and ghosted him. So whatever you decide to do, just know that you have it right. This guy is a complete loser, and you 100% don't owe him a single thing. My boyfriend threw a temper tantrum after I asked him very kindly to please trim his beard, as it bothered me when it touched my cheek. And now, because I said that, he's acting incredibly childish, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my boyfriend does not really give lots of attention to his appearance, so he really doesn't do much about clothing or about the way he appears. The other day, I asked him sweetly by text message, stating, hey, if you wanted to, could you trim your facial hair the next time we meet? Because it hurts my face when we're close to each other. I also continue telling him that I think you look better in my eyes with your facial hair trimmed as opposed to it just being grown out. When I sent him that, he only pressed the like button, which usually happens when he is mad. So the next time we meet up, he came without his facial hair trimmed, which was okay, but I felt something was wrong. And later, he started a discussion asking me if my attraction to him is influenced by something so trivial as facial hair. I responded to this by saying, no, I like that too, but I honestly find you much more attractive if you take care of your facial hair, as well as your appearance in general, instead of just leaving it unkept. And after he said that, he finally said, it's okay if you ask me, but you shouldn't be telling me what you like, because I already knew that. Now, as a side note, his facial hair is not fully developed. It has random patches, as well as lone curly hairs at random places. The last time he trimmed it was when he went for a haircut at a barber 5 weeks ago. So the result was long hairs and patches, and it really was not pleasant to the eye, and it just did not look good, nor did the feeling of it rubbing against my cheeks feel good at all either. He didn't seem satisfied with my answer, so he then said, this is like you're trying to micromanage my appearance. This is who I am, and I find it extensive and exhaustive to trim my facial hair more than once every 2 weeks. Now, when he said this, I was taken aback, and I explained to him that it was okay not to do that. But I then asked, don't you care about how I feel about your looks? It's not like I was asking you to shave your hair every day with a razor. I'm just asking you to trim it back just a little bit. He then said, it shouldn't matter if you love me. If you want a guy that's regarding himself as a jewel and is taking care of his appearance all the time, that is not me. I find that kind of cringy. At that point, I ended the conversation because I found it absolutely exhaustive to fight over something so trivial, but I can't shake the feelings that he really started this argument for something so benign and easy to do. The next day, he came home again untrimmed and asked me, so were you expecting me to come in with my hair trimmed again? And at that point, I just didn't even reply. It's too exhausting and it's starting to not be worth my time. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Your boyfriend's being a little overdramatic, don't you think? I mean, it's just facial hair, and he really is contradicting himself left and right. He said that he doesn't really care about his appearance and highly implied that he won't be taking care of his appearance anytime soon. And his excuse to not want to shave every 2 weeks is really, really lazy in my opinion. Like that literally would just take 5 minutes, if anything, to take care of. So he's being really ridiculous. I think this might be a case where this guy just doesn't like people telling him what to do, so he will go against the grain just to try and prove some kind of weird point. And in my opinion, that's just like super toxic. There's no need for that. It's just really weird. And if anything, that in and of itself is incredibly cringy. And to top it all off, he doesn't even have a good beard. The original poster described it as having patches and basically having something akin to like some kind of neck beard. And if that's the case, I can completely understand where this lady's coming from, where she's asking him to try and trim it down because it feels weird against her face, and she simply doesn't like it. I really don't think this was that big of a deal, but the boyfriend in this situation escalated this into something that was absolutely crazy. So hopefully you can work out this situation, because your boyfriend's being an absolute moron right now, and it really would just take about 5 minutes for him to trim down his beard and have some semblance of a clean appearance. My family is giving me an ultimatum, forcing me to choose between my boyfriend or them, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So I have been dating my boyfriend by the name of Charlie for just over a year. Charlie is not his real name. My mother and I were talking about Christmas and what our plans were going to be. I had invited Charlie to Christmas last week, and I relayed this to my mother. Christmas is going to be hosted at my mother's sister's house. I was then informed by my mother that Charlie is not welcome at my aunt's house for Christmas. For some backstory, there was an incident that happened in the summer, which my mother and aunt found out about, and ever since then, my relationship with both of them has changed for the worst. Basically, the way Charlie treats me and our romantic relationship was to both of them incredibly disgusting, and they jumped to some awful conclusions that definitely were not true in the slightest, and things have been extremely rocky ever since then. It was something private that honestly is really nobody's business, but they definitely made it their business. I attempted to defuse the situation at the time, but my mother was having none of it and has been threatening to tell my father all about our love life. My mother and aunt really do believe that Charlie is treating me terribly, which is so far from the case it's not even funny. My aunt then went home and told her husband, my uncle, about what she saw, and now as a result, he also hates Charlie. Now, Charlie and his family already suspect that my family does not like him. Charlie's mother is constantly making comments about his lack of coming over to my house to build a relationship with my family. Comments about me hanging out with one of my brothers and sister-in-law and not extending the invitation to Charlie in the slightest. To be honest, Charlie's mother sticks her nose in our relationship and it is quite exhausting. But this is a completely different issue. My mother told me in September that no one in my immediate family likes likes Charlie, and it's not for the initial private reason that we discussed. And I'm just feeling very hurt and upset about the whole situation. My mother proceeded to gaslight and manipulate me by telling me that this may be one of my father's last Christmases. He has had 3 mini strokes in the past year and has issues with his balance, memory, speech, and it all really is starting to go downhill for him. She then says that none of my brothers will ever treat Charlie as a friend or a family member, and that Charlie is just another boyfriend, and he's not my fiance or my husband. She also threw in that next year when I have my own plans, I can do whatever I want. I can come to family get-togethers, I can come and go as I please, and I can even go no communications with everyone that I want. She basically laid out every option to me, and I was honestly just shocked, and I didn't say a single thing to that. I have been trying really hard over the last 6 months to mend this relationship, to try and fix things and be more present at home. I was spending a lot of time with my boyfriend at his house, as well as with his family, and ever since then, I have scaled back dramatically. And for this to be dropped on me all of a sudden is just a major blow. The conversation ended with my mother actually giving me an ultimatum. She said I can either have Christmas at my aunt's house without Charlie, or I can have Christmas with Charlie and his family. So now I'm at a point where I don't know how I'm going to be able to show my face at my aunt's house after this. So do I now go to Christmas at my aunt's house without Charlie? Or is there another route that I should go? I just do not know what to do, because either way, I disappoint someone very important to me, and I will be the one ending up very heartbroken and very hurt. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Your mom is being incredibly toxic. For starters, the fact that they're putting their nose in your business is absolutely disgusting in my opinion. I spared some details in the beginning of this story about their romantic relationship, but needless to say, the things that they were getting upset about really is nobody else's business but the original poster and Charlie, and I'll just leave it at that. But when it comes to your mom actually giving you an ultimatum of any kind, this is like narcissist 101. Anytime there's some kind of ultimatum that pops up in conversation, that in my opinion is a massive red flag, and that should be a very clear indication that what's happening currently is not right. So hopefully this can all work out for you, because it really does seem unfair for you to have to choose between your boyfriend or your family, and hopefully there's some kind of future where Charlie is welcomed back into the family and there won't be so much tension in your lives. My partner's mother is unbelievably toxic and truly will be the reason why I choose not to marry him, because of the way she treats me. And I'm at a loss and I really don't know what to do, because my boyfriend refuses to address these issues with her and draw some kind of boundaries to prevent her from treating me like garbage all the time. Here's what happened. So I have been in a relationship with John for the last decade. John is not his real name. Due to circumstances surrounding my family, I've lived with him, first with housemates and now on our own, for the last 9 years. We have had our issues over the years, but we've worked hard to get through them. We are now in a better and more stable and secure place than we have ever been. And right now, we're talking about marriage and children far more seriously than we ever have in the past. Now, the only issue in all of this is his mother and his immediate family unit. His extended family are amazing people, and tellingly, none of them have anything to do with John's immediate family. They are such a point of contention that even at the age of 20, I told John I didn't want to ever marry him for no other reason other than his mother. We'll call her Anna. That's not her real name. Anna essentially took one look at me 10 years ago and decided I was not good enough for her son, but she took it to such extremes. For example, the first time I ever visited her, under a year into our relationship, she felt it was appropriate to passive-aggressively comment about me choosing not to wear makeup to dinner in the torrential rain that we were experiencing that day. At this said meal, she and her friends openly trashed on the fact that John paid for me and that we didn't split the bill right then and there. After that visit, she relayed to John that she didn't approve of me because apparently to her, she decided that I didn't shower enough. And she determined that because I didn't wash my hair every day, that meant I wasn't showering at all. A year or so later, Anna and her husband Bill and their 2 sons came to help us move, along with my parents. My mom caught Anna complaining to Bill about how lazy I was and the fact that I wasn't helping by carrying boxes up and down stairs, but instead I was just unpacking. My mom reminded Anna that I have a fairly well-hidden physical disability that affects my coordination and movement, so that wasn't easy or safe for me like it was for everybody else. Anna just went silent silent and didn't even bother to apologize for saying that stuff about me. And these are just a few examples that really illustrate her character. There have been many more comments made about me, and probably even more than I've even been told about. And ever since then, I have only seen her twice. It's made easier by the fact that she doesn't care to visit her son and expects him to go to her. And of course, I am never invited to any of these plans, and I'm completely fine with that. Recently, John has been rather obviously hinting that he's going to be proposing soon. I want to marry him, I really do. But the big issue for me is that he never argues against anything his mother says, and that's whether it's concerning me or not. He just brushes off whatever she says and claims that this is just the way she is, and there is no point in starting an argument over it because she's never going to change anyways. I've been telling him for years that I need him to understand that either he has my back and he puts her in her place, or our marriage will not include her family and neither will the lives of our future kids. And that is a hill I am honestly willing to stay on in this relationship. However, every time I have brought this up in the past, he will entertain this topic for about 5 minutes and then he just shuts it off and stops engaging in the conversation. So I guess my actual question through all of this is just that. How do I communicate that this is a very serious boundary for me, and that if he wants to marry me, then this is something we absolutely have to address? So let me get this straight. After 10 years, he is still unwilling to stand up to his mother and tell her basically to get lost and mind her own business when it comes to you and your relationship with him? I mean, that is a big red flag in my opinion. He needs to stand on his own 2 feet and tell these people to basically get lost. And this has been going on for over a decade. I mean, just imagine how badly this mom's gonna treat you when you finally do get married and have some kind of kids in your life. She's gonna demand that you come over with the kids, and she's probably gonna treat them like garbage as well. There really is no fixing the situation with your mom, aside from your husband getting involved and setting a very clear line in the sand, and basically telling her, hey, this is my wife. You're not gonna talk to her like that, and you're not gonna make these kind of nasty remarks ever again. Otherwise, you are out of my life. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. If he really loves you, he will recognize that the way his mom is acting is incredibly toxic and completely inappropriate moving forward. So hopefully he understands where you're coming from, because otherwise this is going to be a rough marriage if you do decide to go through with it. His mom is toxic, and she really does not deserve any part of either of your lives. An entitled Karen makes false accusations of harassment at work, all with the sole intention to try and get as many people fired as possible. And I honestly have never been more disgusted with another person's actions in my life. Here's what happened. So whenever I'm at work, I usually tend to stay on my coworker's good side, and I never start any trouble, while other coworkers do try to start things between themselves, and somehow I always end up being part of it. Usually I remain neutral throughout the issue, or I try not to get involved with the main source of the issue. But this coworker in question went about making false accusations about our head cashiers, as well as the cashier supervisor and even a fellow associate from a different department, stating that all of them were harassing her. And this even got to the point that one of them was fired and the others were given harsh warnings. So this entitled Karen would always complain about everything. She would complain about where she was stationed at, her lack of hours, even though she's technically giving away her hours or calling out, and calling the manager's store phone number, claiming that the head cashier is apparently abusing her by making her stay outside in the garden center and refusing to let her wear a winter coat despite the head cashier giving her time to go get her coat, only for this entitled Karen to then say, "No, it's fine, I don't need a coat." Then she calls management sobbing that she's cold and wasn't allowed to go get her coat in the first place. This caused our head cashiers and our department supervisor to almost get fired multiple times. Luckily, the cameras were there to back up their claims, and they got a write-up along with several warnings. Eventually, some of the cashiers pointed out that most of the time, this Karen of a coworker doesn't actually work, and actually spends most of her shift FaceTiming with her friend. Then, about a week later, a cashier was fired, and this is all because this entitled Karen figured out which cashier outed her to management and made up some kind of sob story about the cashier harassing her, even when everyone else, myself included, backed up the cashier, telling management that this cashier never harassed this Karen. But unfortunately, management was sucking up to this Karen, and the cashier never came back after that. The second coworker to almost get fired was the hardware associate. He had seen this entitled Karen get her first House Depot badge for getting a lot of surveys day's done or something like that. So he came and gave Karen a gentle pat on her shoulder to congratulate her. Karen, with the most disgusting look on her face, as if this guy had just spit in her face, screamed back at him, "Back off, don't touch me." This hardware associate was incredibly surprised and shocked at the sudden outburst that was directed right at him. He held up his hands while backing off and said to her, "Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I was only congratulating you for getting your first badge." But this entitled Karen doubled down. She said, "You weren't congratulating me. You were invading my personal space, harassing me, and touching me without my consent." Sally, one of our head cashiers and supervisor, tries to calm down this Karen, but the entitled Karen refused to calm down unless the hardware associate apologized for touching her without her consent and to stay away from her, to which the hardware associate did apologize and kept his distance from then on. Apparently, even after the hardware associate had apologized to the Karen, and all of the cashiers and myself included heard him say it, this entitled Karen went to management to report this guy for supposedly harassing her and also making advances towards her while they were on break together. I didn't find out until my next shift that due to this accusation, this guy nearly got fired and wasn't allowed to work for a couple of weeks until it was all sorted out. By the time everything was sorted out between the Karen and this guy, Karen had already turned in her 2-week notice because she refused to work anywhere near this guy because she claimed that she didn't feel safe around this guy, even though management had found out that this Karen lied about him making advances towards her. After this guy was allowed to return to work and the Karen quit for a safer job away from him, this guy openly said that if they did fire him, he would have been fine with it because it'll show management that they need to stop sucking up to this stupid lady as well as other entitled customers' ridiculous demands. Because in his words, all the good associates are leaving because management can't say no to bad customers or bad associates, and management would rather just suck up to somebody just to try and save their own butts. I found out that this entitled Karen had started working at Walmart near my house, and when she saw me, she asked if that guy who apparently made advances towards her still worked there. I responded by saying, "Yes, but he never did that. That's just what you said, not me or the other associates who work there." And when I said that, this entitled Karen, probably for the first time ever, just straight up shut up and walked away. But since COVID started, I haven't seen her there anymore. She probably left for another job or moved up in department status. Either way, hopefully no one she ever runs into ever has to deal with those types of false accusations ever again. The way this entitled Karen was acting is absolutely inappropriate. Like, there's just no good excuse for anything that she was doing. She was literally making things up just to try and get people fired. And sure, the one coworker probably should not have patted that lady on the shoulder, but at the end of the day, what he was doing honestly was innocent, and it did not warrant this type of reaction in the slightest. I can't stand people who act like this, and they're just finding ways to try and abuse whatever privilege they have just to try and ruin someone else's life. So hopefully karma comes back to bite her one day and gives her back exactly what she deserves, because she had no right to take away these people's jobs and to basically try and ruin someone's reputation. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. My family wants to punish my aunt for rescheduling a holiday dinner that they were planning on going to, and as a result, I'm being dragged into this family drama in a way that I never signed up for, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my aunt has always hosted most holiday dinners, and as we've gotten older, it's become much harder to get everyone together. She chooses a date and a time based on when she and her own kids are available, and then announces it to the rest of the family. If we can attend, that's great, and if not, that's just how it is. I completely understand that trying to coordinate 25 plus adults during the holiday season is nearly impossible, and if she were to ask about everyone's availability, she would inevitably end up having to choose a date that she knew someone wasn't available for, and that would create a whole other set of issues. And for the record, I've never really had a problem with how she goes about scheduling the event that she's hosting. As a side note, my mom would be happy to host, but my aunt always ends up doing it. I'm not sure if there's some kind of rivalry or hurt feelings there of some kind that I'm not aware of, but again, I don't really see the big deal. Either accept things how they are or say something and advocate for change. This year, one of my aunt's kids ended up changing their schedule at the last minute and wasn't going to be able to attend on the original date planned for the Christmas dinner. My aunt has now decided to reschedule it, and now some of the people who couldn't attend the original date are now able to join us. But now because because of that, some people won't be able to make it. My sister is one who's available for the original date, but won't be able to come to the new one because she's working. I think it's important to note that she didn't schedule any time off of work for the original date. It was just a happy coincidence that it lined up in the way that it did. Nobody was asked about availability for either date as well. My husband now thinks that we should boycott the whole thing and try and make some kind of weird point by making this big show and tell about one person missing the event by having half the family not show up in protest. This way, in his mind, this will hopefully maybe sink in that she shouldn't change the dinner. My sister is also suggesting that we just invite that whole side of the family to the Christmas dinner that I'm hosting on the 25th for my parents, my siblings, and my grandparents. I will be 31 weeks pregnant and not super keen on going from 9 people to 25 plus people, all on Christmas Day at that. We're also well aware that this aunt and her kids are the only ones who wouldn't be able to attend that day, and that to me feels like that would be really petty and toxic behavior. So I'm kind of stuck at a crossroads and I honestly don't know what to do. I honestly would not play into some weird drama that you're clearly not a part of. And good for you as well. You've managed to stay out of this garbage in a really wonderful way where you are clearly left out of the loop. And in this case, it's probably a good thing. There's clearly some family drama going on involving your aunt and this stupid Christmas party. And now your husband and your sister are trying to use your private Christmas party as some weird petty form of protest, all at the expense of your plans and your expectations. And if I was in your shoes, I would not play into that for a second. I would not start inviting more people and saying, hey, let's do this as some kind of protest, because that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Drama like this really does happen around the holidays, but that does not mean that you have to deal with that for a second. So if I was you, I would put your foot down and say, no, we're not inviting more people. I'm going to be 31 weeks pregnant, and there's no way I'm going to be dealing with that. And honestly, you shouldn't deal with that. They're just doing this to try and get back at this aunt for some dumb reason. And they're using you as a pawn in their stupid chess game. And I just would not play into that for a second. I'm also really on the original poster side here. If you can make the party, fantastic. But if you can't make the party, then go do something else. Like the people who are complaining about this are all adults in this situation, right? Are they really incapable of not trying to punish a family member, all because they tried to reschedule it where their kids could show up to the dinner? Like, this honestly feels so ridiculous at this point. So hopefully all of this can work out for you, because your family's being super obnoxious and there's no reason to punish your aunt, all because she's trying to reschedule the dinner so that she can spend time with her kids on Christmas Day, which, by the way, is not that unreasonable of a request. I'm convinced that my wife's friend secretly wanted me and my wife to get a divorce behind our backs, and I'm honestly disgusted by the way she acted, and I don't know what to think. So my wife and I have been married for 2 years. After 1 year of marriage, we were going through a rough patch due to some emotional issues that led me being resentful and frustrated. At that time, my wife's friend, who my wife knew for more than 8 years and has been friends with her since they were in school, was already living with us. She moved in with us a few months ago, before this rough patch that we hit, as she came to the country we were living in for her new job. Now, I'm an introvert, but I badly needed someone to vent to. So when the rough patch hit, opening up to my wife's friend was fairly easy, as we both were always joking and talking with each other around the house. To my surprise, after only hearing my side of the story, she immediately told me to reconsider the relationship with my wife. Thankfully, I was not willing to break up with my wife, as I still cared about her. Fast forward and months went by, and this friend started making some remarks when we were both alone, or when my wife was not at home. She would say things like, if I had a man who cooked, I would literally tell him to just move in with me. Or something like, why does she always call you honey or babe? Your relationship is super unhealthy. Another time when I had to go to work out of town, she told my wife out of nowhere that I'm going to leave her one day. In another similar incident, I told this friend that I might break up and go to a different country, and she said, you can't do that alone. It would be better if you did it with someone else. And her tone really hinted that she wanted to go with me. Even when me and my wife got engaged, she never congratulated my wife or me and acted really weird about it overall. Eventually, me and this friend became kind of close emotionally. A cousin that I was very close to passed away, and my wife and I got into a huge fight. I was sitting in the balcony at around midnight with tears in my eyes when this friend came to me and started rubbing my back and tried to comfort me. Eventually, I told her about my memories with my cousin, and I just talked to her about what was going on. She cried a little bit too, and we hugged each other for a good 1 to 2 minutes. We didn't tell my wife wife about any of this. The point is to be noted is that this friend never even hugged my wife or even cried in front of her. She is emotionally that reserved and prefers to be alone most of the time. 2 weeks later, me and my wife decided to move to another country, and as we were moving, forgot a locket that belonged to her, but I decided to try and keep it as a memory. But I very quickly realized that this was the wrong thing to do. So I texted the friend that I left the locket in the car she used to drive to drop us off at the airport. I also brought some earrings and I left it as a gift for her as well, telling her that she could keep them or throw them away or do whatever she wants with them. She thanked me for the earrings via text message, and later during the middle of the flight we were taking, I found her locket in my backpack, and I honestly don't know when she slipped her locket back in my bag. When we were standing outside the airport bidding goodbye, this friend only gave a handshake to my wife, but hugged me in front of my wife, even though she is not a hugger, and my wife strictly told her to never hug me. Once we separated from the friend, my wife and I decided to take a small break, as we were both overwhelmed. I texted this friend and I thanked her for the support that she gave me during our rough patch, and I also mentioned that I did like her as a person, but I never mentioned that I want her or anything like that in the message. But she then told my wife about this. Now, the thing that really surprised me was that she left out all the comments and remarks that she gave me when we were both completely alone, even her slipping the locket in my bag part, and told only my wife things that made me look like a complete jerk. Naturally, my wife was furious at me. It took my wife and I 4 hours for the whole talk that we had, where we decided that we wanted to stay together. A few days after this happened, my wife called this friend to ask about the job opportunity this friend told her about in Copenhagen. This friend knew someone who could help my wife with a job opportunity over there. Before answering, this friend asked my wife about our relationship situation, and my wife told her that we worked things out. And almost immediately after hearing this, she started acting weird and saying that she doesn't think that the opportunity is available anymore. And she said this in a really non-friendly tone. After that, I broke all contact with this friend, but my wife still tried to keep in touch with her. But whenever my wife tried confronting the friend for the things that she said and did behind our backs, the friend refused to answer calls and would get irritated and say that all of this is a giant mistake and then just hang up the phone. It's now been more than 6 months since then, and my wife stopped texting her, and they haven't spoken since, even though they're still friends on Facebook and Instagram. I feel bad that I ruined their relationship, but my wife says it's not my fault because she is an adult and she made these choices consciously. And my wife also revealed that this friend of hers was always extremely competitive with her. I have already apologized to my wife for my faults and promised to never repeat that ever again. Do you think that this friend either liked me or wanted to break my wife's relationship up out of jealousy? It all seems so confusing, and I honestly am not sure what to believe. First off, the original poster was spending a little bit too much time with this friend behind his wife's back. Like, honestly, the way you were connecting with her and basically using her as some kind of sounding board against what your wife is or isn't doing, or whatever rough patch you may have been going through, personally was completely inappropriate. You guys had an emotional affair, like there's no other way around it, and you really should be counting your lucky stars that your wife even decided to stay with you, because what you just described is really inappropriate. But on to your question itself, yeah, she was definitely trying to break you guys up. Like, she very clearly did not want you two to be together in the slightest, and that's not fair for you guys at all, especially when you consider the fact that she very clearly is competitive with your wife. But all that pushed aside, none of this would have happened if you hadn't started making moves on this lady. Maybe I'm rude by saying this, so please correct me in the comment section if I am, but the problems that this original poster had faced because of this lady is literally his own fault. So I think moving forward, being loyal to your wife and choosing to stay with her and spend time with her and sort out the problems with just her really would take you a long way and could completely avoid this situation altogether, as well as possibly preserve your marriage with your wife. Today, I messed up by falling in love with someone that I know for a fact is never going to love me in return, and now I truly don't know what to do. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I'm a very nice person. I love deeply and I care deeply about people. Where I mess up is that I'm giving that deep energy to people who don't want to receive it. So I've had a crush on this guy for 2 years. I met him 2 years ago as a hookup type of guy because I was moving away soon. It sucked after because I just wanted him so badly. I've always had a crush on this guy since then. Fast forward to this year, and we started talking again more consistently in July. He wanted to meet me again and then wanted to also also spend some quality time together, if you know what I mean. He's 4 hours away from me, and he's in medical school, so his schedule is very tight with time. We had tried for a few months to align schedules, and it finally happened this weekend. My dilemma here, and why I know now that I shouldn't have went, is that I like him a lot. In my eyes, he's everything I want in a life partner. I've expressed that I liked him, and he says that he likes me, but he can't do anything like that because his medical residency starts later in 2023, and he knows it will take all of his time. He's very career focused, and that's his #1 priority, besides family and religion. Plus, with that residency, he will be moving further away from me. I also think he's afraid to be emotionally available because he doesn't want it to distract from his career. I thought at one point that I had truly accepted the fact that he doesn't want anything serious at this time in his life, so I thought I'd be able to handle seeing him in person this weekend. But the moment I saw him, my heart dropped because all of my strong feelings for him came back. I didn't realize just how much I missed being around him. He's so funny and cute, very intelligent, very well-rounded. The next day when he was at work at the hospital, I just started crying by myself because all my feelings came back so strongly, and I knew he wouldn't reciprocate that in the slightest. I tried to focus on having fun and living in the moment. We went to dinner and he paid for it. We were just talking all night and having a good time. I feel so at ease around him. The last morning, I dropped him off at the airport because he's flying to his hometown for the holidays. He kissed me goodbye and said, "I'll see you later." And when I drove home, I just cried so hard. I texted him that I was grateful to spend the weekend with him and thanked him for taking the time out of his schedule to have me over. I told him that I miss him way more than I realized after seeing him in person, but he never replied back. But he did send me some money for gas. I keep thinking about the what ifs. Does he see me as a potential partner for him in the future? Does he feel a connection like how I do? I keep wanting him to know how I feel, that I have the patience and support and the love that he might want and need. I want to be a rock for him. I want to be there for him through all of it. I do anything to make something work, but I know all of that is useless because he won't open up his heart and try. He says he's narrow-minded with it. I know I should have let him go when he told me that he didn't want anything serious. I should have moved on earlier. I should have listened to what he said and believed him when he said he doesn't want anything serious. It's like I can't stop thinking why? Why am I not good enough for him to try something with me? Why can't he see what I could give him? Why does he have to close himself up? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not good enough? I think I got hung up on all the small things. When he says he likes me, when he says he was so excited to see me, when he gave me a kiss goodbye and everything in between. It's all my fault though. I know I'm not obligated to get a text back, and I know I'm not obligated for him to open up to me or to tell me how he feels about me. It's all so very heartbreaking and confusing, and I don't know what to do. First off, I think you need to realize, in my opinion, that you just got played. This guy literally only brought you out so he could spend some quality time with you for a few days and then basically ghosted you. This guy's living a double life. He's spending quality time with you on the side while also professing that his family and his religion is some kind of priority. But I can guarantee you if this is what he's doing on the side, those other two things that normally mean something to other people is probably just some big facade for this life he's living. And I think the sooner you realize that, the better. Also, this entire post, in my opinion, came off as very desperate. He really does not feel the same way towards you, and it's really unfortunate. He clearly just wanted a hookup, and it's obvious he's never gonna pick you over his career. And what's worse is you probably already know that. You probably know he's never gonna pick you over his career, but he still invited you anyways. And this just perpetuated this idea of, well, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Trust me, the problem's not with you. The problem's with this guy and his lack of morals and the fact that he's playing on your emotions. But you truly are giving yourself a disservice, as well as basically stifling any type of emotional growth by holding on to this fantasy that this guy's ever gonna bring you into his life. You can do so much better than this scumbag who only invited you over for some kind of hookup. So hopefully this works out for you in some kind of way, and you can find it in yourself to find another person who really will love you in the way that you want to be loved in return. My entitled mom stole my inheritance money by claiming it under my name and falsifying records just to get the money, and now she's refusing to give it to me, claiming that she needs it or else she's gonna be homeless, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I found out earlier this year that I was supposed to receive around $160,000 in inheritance money when my father passed away. I found out by looking into a cabinet in our house. I was compelled to do so because my mother acts rich or poor whenever it suits her, as well as showing other really strange behavior. I found a letter that was addressed specifically to me from the life insurance company that had my inheritance. All I needed to do was submit some paperwork and they'd give me a check. I'm not sure how, but my mother somehow submitted documents for me and even cashed the check that was in my name. I'm also not sure why she felt entitled to do that when she got nearly $500,000 in inheritance herself. When I confronted her about it, she obviously did not take it well. She was very adamant that it was her money, up until I informed her that after I found the documents, I called the life insurance company and received photocopies of the check, as well as the submitted documents. After I told her that, she tried negotiating with me, stating that she can give me $10,000 to start with, and then $2,000 every month. But I said no. I said she will guilt trip me into delaying her payments if we go that route. She then tells me that she will be homeless if I get all the money at once. I eventually make her show me her bank statements, and as far as I know, she has around $330,000 in her bank account. In addition, she's been making six figures with her job for the past 3 years, so there's no way she would be homeless. She is completely lying. I told her I need a good amount of money if I want to have any chance of moving out. I wanted to move out with my friend, but my mom took way too long to give me any money. I received $50,000 from her, and like a week or so later, she started asking if she could borrow $20,000 for a month. She claims that she needs it in her bank account so that the lender can approve the condo or the house that she wants to buy. She asked if I would be okay, and I stupidly told her that I'd be getting grants from school too. She then wanted to borrow $20,000 on top of the grant money by passive-aggressively mentioning it whenever she could. A few weeks later, she forced me to go with her to the bank to withdraw the $20,000, and this was back on October 3rd. On November 23rd, I asked her to give me $2,000. I told her it's been 2 months and I want a portion of it back. She then gives me the silent treatment, and the next day I try calling her, but she just starts crying hysterically. She says things like, "I knew I shouldn't have trusted you with money. What are you gonna do with it? Spend it all on illegal substances? You're just gonna use it for gambling, right? Why are you being so mean? You ruined my holiday and you ruined my life. You're being abnormal. You're just doing this because you're behind in life and you're desperate. I spent so much money on food the past month that I just can't do it." And excuses like this kept happening over and over again. A couple of days later, we have a 4-hour argument. During this argument, I was so disgusted with her behavior that I told her I want nothing to do with her. A couple of days after that, to my surprise, she comes into my room and asks me for a hug. She starts crying and says that she just suppresses all her thoughts and feelings. She says she'll give me $500 now and then $500 on December 2nd. I mean, what is going on? I swallow my anger for a couple of days, but then I could no longer hold it in. I wasn't giving her the silent treatment, but I wasn't looking at her or initiating any form of talking. She starts to notice this and asks me what's wrong, but she automatically starts screaming, "It's the money, isn't it?" And then repeats the same thing she did the last time, going through all these excuses, implying that I'm gambling or that I'm just using it for stupid reasons. And again, she made it very clear that she wants to buy a condo or a house. I told her that I'm mad at her because she told me that she needed the $20,000 for a month, and it's now been over 2 months, and she is still not giving that money back. After this, she started acting like she was about to cry, and then she left the house. She then transferred me another $500, and after that, I haven't talked to her since. It infuriates me that she thinks she's entitled to this money. I mean, why would she need a house in the first place? And this money was only in her account in the first place because she committed fraud. But now, once I let her borrow some money, she's going to treat it like some kind of allowance. It's my money. Legally, it's absolutely mine, and she needs to get over it. She already has $500,000 before she took my money. Since I was 18, I've been working minimum wage jobs. She made it so clear as day that she thinks her needs are way above mine. I don't have utilities, I don't even have a career yet, so I am much less important. Even if that's factually true, I'm your child and that money is legally mine. Another example of her entitlement was when I was 19 years old. I was working at a tutoring place in addition to a restaurant, all while taking 16 units in college with no car. I was leaving the house one day to go get a haircut, and my mom then asked me, where do you think you're going? And when I told her that I was going to get a haircut, she said verbatim, "Really? You're supposed to be using that money to help me." That's honestly how entitled she is. At this point, she has received a total of $660,000, while her child child, who is a full-time student with 2 jobs and no car, is not important enough to use the money they earned from their job to get a haircut. I'm so mad, and I just have this huge problem that really needs to get taken care of. But I hate making people uncomfortable. This is also why I usually cannot blindside a person by randomly bringing up an issue. I usually have to text them first, but I'm starting to think that that's never a good idea. This is all so frustrating, and I simply don't know what to do. Listen to me very carefully. You really do need to get a lawyer and take care of this legally. This is actually unbelievable. She is manipulating you left and right, and she falsified documents and stole your money. You have a legal right to this money, and if I was in your shoes, I definitely would escalate this further and seek some kind of legal counsel who can properly help you navigate this situation. That is not unreasonable. If anything, it's probably necessary, because you can bet she's gonna string you along for the rest of your life, and pretty soon that money's gonna dry up and you will never see a cent of it. She literally committed fraud at your expense, and if you're not careful, this very easily could come against you one day. So in my opinion, it's time to seek an attorney who can help you with the nuances of a case like this, because this is a very serious issue, and I think it's about time, especially based on her behavior, to start taking this situation seriously and seek legal advice. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. An entitled Karen demands that I give her my personal food items just so she can try and enjoy her breakfast a little bit more. And when I tell her that I'm not doing that and she can't have my property, she files a complaint against me online, implying that I was rude and denied her some kind of service. But I got the last laugh as I was allowed to respond online. And in the process, I put her right in her place. Here's what happened. When it comes to working at a hotel, guests in the morning are something else. Some are sleepy and or friendly in the morning, and some of them are cranky, but some are just plain garbage. Usually I work afternoon shift, since that was the shift I worked when I was in college, and I have the most experience with it. I have worked all 3 shifts before, even having a few months when I worked all 3 shifts in 1 week. It all depended on who was on our staff at the time. During this stretch of time, I was just needed for afternoons, but had occasional mornings that I did work. This particular day, I was scheduled for a morning and an afternoon, making it in total a 16-hour shift. I don't mind these, as management doesn't mind if I slack off as long as I get all my tasks done, which I usually knock out before the end of the first half. Since I knew I would be working that long and I was ready to go with time to spare, I decided to stop at McDonald's to pick up some breakfast. I was planning on getting their breakfast burritos, so I brought a small bottle of hot sauce. The way our hotel is set up, it has an open area for breakfast right across from the front desk, so I can see all of breakfast and the guests can't see me working at my desk. This is very useful since we didn't have a breakfast attendant working that day, and the front desk is in charge of cleaning, restocking, and everything else for breakfast. It was slow when I got in. Barely anyone was eating breakfast that day. I went to the breakfast area and checked if we are low on anything or if I need to clean anything. I'm chatting with one of our long-term stay guests as I'm sweeping some cereal off the floor, and all is good. After I finish all that and start a new pot of coffee to replace the one that's about to run out, I start going back to the desk when a mother and a daughter come to breakfast. I say good morning as we pass each other, and she says it back. They go get some food, and I do some of my shift start jobs and check on the checkout list. I start eating my burrito with the hot sauce while standing at the back of the wall of the front desk, clearly away from the computers, as that's one of the rules while we're eating. After a few minutes going to town on the burrito, the mother comes up to the desk. I put the food down next to the bottle of hot sauce and address her. How can I help you, ma'am? Is there any hot sauce for the burritos? As a side note, we don't have any hot sauce for breakfast, mostly because there aren't really any options for it. We don't have scrambled eggs that they can be used for, and we have breakfast salsa for the burritos. I explain that we have breakfast salsa, but we don't have any hot sauce. She then points to my hot sauce and says, "What's that? That looks like hot sauce." I say, "Yes, it is, but it's my personal hot sauce that I brought from home." She then points at it and says, "Give me that then." Yes, she didn't ask me if she could use it. She demanded. Even if she did ask nicely, I still wouldn't give it to her because of sanitary reasons. I kept putting hot sauce on my burrito as I ate, and I know for a fact that the opening of the bottle hit that area where my saliva was all over it. I look at her and I say, "I'm sorry, but I cannot do that because of sanitary reasons." But this entitled Karen was not having it. She says, "That is absolute garbage. I've never stayed at a hotel where hot sauce wasn't provided at breakfast." And this is actually false, as we have breakfast salsa salsa out there for her to use, which counts towards the requirement that hot sauce falls under as well. It's not even an hour into my long shift, and I was already regretting the day. I say to her, again, you are welcome to use the breakfast salsa, but I cannot give you this hot sauce, as it's my personal bottle, and I definitely had my saliva all over it. Bear in mind too, this wasn't a new bottle. I bought it a few weeks ago. It was about 3/4 of the way gone already, and there was dried up hot sauce all over the threads of the wooden cap and opening. And after I said that, she left to go finish breakfast with her daughter. After a few more minutes, she returns to the desk to check out. As I'm checking her out, she asked me for my name, and after I told her this, I knew it was going straight to corporate and that she would file an online complaint, which was fine, since I was one of the few people who have access to the response feature on there, despite not being a manager by title. Or if she called corporate, I knew it would be quelled by stating that the guest was demanding something that I paid for with my own money, of which the hotel did not own. Sure enough, a few hours later, there was a review from this entitled Karen. The scores were fine except for friendliness of staff, as well as the breakfast, which honestly is not a shocker. In her comments, she said the following: "There was no hot sauce for burritos, only salsa, and the original poster at the front desk was rude when I asked for the hot sauce that he had behind the desk, claiming he couldn't give it to me for sanitary reasons. He should not have been hoarding the hot sauce bottle. The hotel needs better staff that would bend their back for the guest." Immediately, I asked in the staff group chat, which had our owners and managers in it, if I could respond to this one, since it happened to me on my shift, and thankfully they said to go for it, but they do need to read what I say first. After reading staff notes on her reservation, including the previous ones, here's basically what I wrote, which management loved right away. I said, "I'm sorry if you were not satisfied during your stay here at our hotel. Please know that we try to make every guest feel special. If you felt unsatisfied about anything else, like if we should have kept the pool open an extra 45 minutes instead of the half hour we did for you, please let us know so we can do better. As for the issue on hand, we spoke to the front desk agent about the situation, as he was misinformed about our guest policies, specifically with breakfast. It would have been a health code violation on par with spitting in the food if he gave you the hot sauce, not just for sanitary reasons. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. He now has a more accurate reason in the future to why he cannot give personal food items to guests. In the meantime, we replaced his personal bottle of hot sauce with a new one. Have a good day." And that was truly the best kind of revenge I possibly could have asked for. Good for the original poster for basically getting the last word in. I mean, how entitled do you have to be to start demanding stuff that is the personal property of the employee that you're trying to shake down? I mean, what kind of weirdo acts like that? They clearly are just entitled and want to have everything their way, and they're going to make you as miserable as possible until you bend to their will, which is honestly so toxic. But good for this original poster for standing up for themselves, because you know what? They probably would have been fired if they handed over that bottle, and you can bet that entitled Karen would not have cared for a second if you lost your job. My mom is very reliant on me for just about everything, ever since I was just a kid, and now I'm not sure if she's taking advantage of me or if I should stick around just to make sure that she's taken care of, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I'm a 24-year-old female, and I have a great relationship with my mom, who's retired. I live with her and my brother, and I have been all my life. We talk, we share, and she's been very supportive of my career and helps me out a lot when I'm not okay, which sadly is pretty often. I've done everything I've wanted without complaints. I've gone out, I've had boyfriends, parties. I was still pretty shy, so it wasn't crazy, and she trusted me. There's fighting, a regular amount, but it's nothing too serious. Sometimes she wakes me when I miss my alarm or helps me with money, so I feel indebted to her. And her cooking is kind of terrible, to be honest. Recently, my grandmother, who's not that old, got really sick. Thankfully, it was just a scare. But ever since, she's moved into my room. For a couple of days, I've been co-sleeping on my mom's bed, the floor, or my brother's bed if he's working a night shift. And that's honestly not a big deal in my culture. Although it's just for some time, it's getting to me. I am tired and I have to go to work early, but even still, I feel like it's something I should do to try and help out. But here's the thing. I recently talked to a friend, and it sort of hit me how often I do what I am supposed to do for the family, and how scared I am to leave my mother on her own because I know she couldn't handle it herself. For example, my grandparent had this medical emergency and she called me, who was at work in a different city, instead of an ambulance, so I would call it instead. Some years ago, when my father passed passed away, I was the one talking to doctors and lawyers and signing stuff while she was the one just crying. It was awful. I just lost my dad, yet I had to take care of it all on my own, and I never complained. This is just 2 examples of many that I could think of off the top of my head. I've always had to deal with these kinds of things, whether it's simple like calling an electrician or paying family debt or planning a funeral. Because I'm the responsible and grounded one, I'm the one that has to do it. And it really begs the question, is this fair? I've been mothering her since I was about 16 years old and planned my first funeral by my grandfather at that time. And I only realized it now that when I needed help, but I had no one to turn to, it was because I've always been the grown-up in this family. A friend told me that the only way she got over something similar was moving out, and that honestly frightens me because I don't know if my mom is unable to cope with stressful situations, or if she's even just unable to perform certain tasks, because it honestly just feels like she just can't do any of this. She isn't evil, so I don't understand why she would do that to me, but this is constant. I wouldn't want anyone to get unnecessarily hurt by me drifting away from her. I'm honestly questioning if me helping is good or bad, and it honestly just makes me more sad. Maybe I'm just overthinking a regular part of life that we all experience. I just honestly feel that I've missed out on some of my 20s, and this is way more than people my age do for their parents. Am I the problem here? Does anybody have any experience similar to what I'm dealing with? I honestly think I'll move out eventually, but I can't imagine her caring for herself without my help. What should I do? Honestly, this is a really tricky situation because I can completely understand where you're coming from. You want to make sure that your mom is able to take care of herself and that she's able to handle all these stressful things that go on in her life. But to be completely honest, I think you need to know that she really can't handle this by herself. I mean, for 30 plus years, she grew up without you, and a lot of the things that you feel the need to step up and take care of, she most definitely knows how to do. So I really would not feel guilty about moving on and moving out. There really is no shame in doing that unless you really do plan on living with your mom for the rest of your life, which at this rate, you saying, oh, I'll move out eventually, really will never happen. So thinking about yourself in this situation might just be the best thing not only for you, but also for your mom to step up and be the adult that she already was before you were born. It's not fair for you to be shackled to your mom like that, but I also recognize that there might be some nuance to the culture that you come from, where staying with your parents for the rest of your life really isn't that unusual. So I think considering your circumstances, I would just go about this in the best way that's appropriate for your situation. I know that my husband is cheating on me, but as of right now, I simply cannot leave, and I don't know what to do. So my husband and I have been married for 4 years, and were previously dating for 2 years. We originally met in college, and were friends for around 3 years before we got together, so we have known each other for around 9 years in total. And in those 9 years, I didn't expect anything like this to happen. I'm 29 years old, and he is 30 years old. So about 2 months ago, my husband was acting a bit strange. And by strange, I mean he's usually very touchy, since physical touch is his love language. He wouldn't be as talkative when he got home from work. Even on his off days, he would be in his office at home, which he usually hates being locked up in his office when he doesn't have work stuff to do in there on his days off. And he wouldn't let me come into the office to check up on him. I confronted him about it, and he said it was just the stress from his job, which I could understand, as he is the money provider in our family. Now, for a bit of context, I don't work because I'm currently 7 months pregnant. Otherwise, I would be working at my tech job. Anyways, when it came to his office, I believed him, and afterwards he was back to being normal. But it happened again, and this time he was being more secretive around his devices, going out every other weekend, as well as other really suspicious things. Jump to 2 weeks ago, and he was out again on the weekend, yet he left his office unlocked where his iPad and his laptop were. I finally got curious, and I decided to look through them. And I know what you're thinking, I shouldn't be snooping around on my husband's private stuff, but curiosity got the best of me, and it was the only time I could check on his device without him noticing. I opened up his laptop first, and I went straight to his emails and files. He doesn't like to listen to me when I tell him that all his passwords really should be different, but still easy to remember in case someone tries to hack him, but he simply doesn't listen to that advice. So it was easy getting into locked files with his one password. I then stumbled upon a file titled AT plus JT. I got curious, as AT are his initials, and surprise, surprise, it was locked with the same password that he uses for everything. I opened it to find loads of pictures and videos with some other girl. I was shocked. I didn't think he would actually do anything like this to me. I started crying hysterically as I scrolled through all these videos and pictures. I clicked on the last one, which was the first one he ever added to the file. I looked at the date, and it was just 2 weeks after we found out I was pregnant. I closed the file as I simply couldn't handle it. Seeing my husband spend some quality time with a woman that I've never met, all while I was either at home or work, or pregnant with our baby. I had simply just seen enough, and the whole scenario made me sick to my stomach. I got ready for bed while still crying, and eventually fell asleep. He woke me up about 2 hours later on accident. He apologized and said that he didn't mean to wake me up, and I just ignored him and went back to sleep. I am being paid on maternity leave, but it's not enough to support myself and a baby if I leave, not even mentioning a divorce lawyer. Ever since I found out, I have been doing the most I can, making or ordering dinners, cleaning the house when I can, and not bothering him when he goes and secretly cheats on me, even though I know all about it. I don't know what to do. I simply feel stuck. I've told my mom and my siblings about it, and my brother says I can move in with him until things are settled, but I don't know how to confront my husband. My sister suggested that they all come over when it happens so that I am safe, which is what I probably will do. Yet I don't have the proper funds for a divorce lawyer. All I know for now is that I need to leave before I give birth to our baby boy. This is all so unfortunate, and I just don't know what to do. What a terrible situation. The original poster is not only pregnant with a baby of 7 months, but their husband is actively cheating on them pretty much constantly, and that is so unbelievably toxic. So I'm truly sorry for all that you're going through right now. That's really unfair. But it sounds like you have a good plan going, and you've got a lot of options. You mentioned how your brother would be willing to help you move into his place in the meantime, at least until you get things figured out. So that's definitely a solid option you could look into. And also there's a situation where you could confront him about this and have your whole family there as well for backup. I mean, that is a very distinct possibility that you could pursue. But with whatever path you decide to take, I really hope things work out for you and your child, because what you're going through is absolutely unfair. And it's such a shame that your husband is making this terrible decision at the expense of you and your future child. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.